This episode is brought to you by Paramount Plus. Gladiator 2 is now streaming on Paramount Plus. Rated R. Years after the death of Maximus, Lucius is forced into the Colosseum after his home is conquered by tyrannical twin Roman emperors. With the future of the empire at stake, he must find strength and honor to return the glory of Rome to its people. Gladiator 2, now streaming on ParamountPlus.com.
The wrongs we must right. The fights we must win. The future we must secure together for our nation. This is what's in front of us. This determines what's next for all of us. We are Marines. We were made for this.
Hey, this is Mark A. Altman.
And this is Daren Dochterman.
And this is Ashley Miller.
And we are the inglorious TREKSPERTS.
And once again, we're back for the coda, the finale, the conclusion of our annual holiday special. To do
Coda,
that,
the death of Star Trek.
to do that,
I read all three of those books.
To provide a rebuttal to our 10-part holiday countdown, which apparently has fascinated, enraged, excited you out there in listener land. We put together, well, it's kind of, I wouldn't say it's the dirty dozen, because not all of you have been to prison and apparently released, but you actually are just sort of like this slugger's row of Star Trek experts, super fans, and just people who have a lot to talk about, and most of all, who will stand up to us. Because not since Kevin Feige, Terry Matalas, and Steve Aspel have we had guests who are willing to actually go toe-to-toe with us. So anyway, I want to welcome, let me, before we get too far along, once again to join us for this conclusion to this 2024 holiday specials. It's none other, the creator and host of the Burnettwork, writer-director of Free Enterprise, and producer of The Hills Run Red, and the new true noir audio drama is Robert Meyer Burnett.
Is it February yet?
No, it's funny. I said that like we were doing a panel, like I was waiting for applause.
Yeah.
But, it's a podcast. It's not a panel. So I don't know where the applause would come from. Anyway, welcome, Rob. It's good to have you back.
I can't believe I'm still here.
Speaking of panels, we were lucky enough to have him join us for some amazing panels at the Star Trek Las Vegas convention. He's a good friend and one of the people who's actually worked on Star Trek on this panel. He's a TV showrunner, a writer and a writer-producer whose credits include such shows as Lost, Alias, Hannibal, and Discovery. It's none other than Jesse Alexander. Hey, Jess.
Hey, how's it going, Mark? I'd like everybody to turn to their Alexa and say, Alexa, black alert.
Don't say that.
And you're welcome.
Don't say that.
Blame me for that, along with Elon Musk being canon, all that stuff. Bring it on. I'm ready. Excited to be here.
We'll see how ready you are. Next is a TV writer-producer whose credits include such shows as Shining Vale, Swamp Thing, Freaked, Millennium, The New Twilight Zone. You got to say which new Twilight. There have been so many new Twilight Zones that doesn't really help people. And Scream, the TV series, is Kay Rydell. Yay, Kay.
Hello, everybody. I'm so happy to be here again. I'm looking forward to discussing all of these wonderful episodes.
Yay.
Okay, next introduction is Gabrielle Stanton. I'm crossing that out because she's not here.
Fired.
You know him as the author of such books as The Music of Star Trek, The Fantasy Worlds of Irwin Allen, not to be confused with The Fantasy Worlds of Robert Meyer Burnett, and Star Trek The Motion Picture, The Art of the Visual Effects. It's none other than Jeffrey Bond.
Nice to be here. I'd just like to say for the record that there's no way this show will be finished in under 4 hours.
Well, it only took us how many hours? Ashley can attest to that.
Yeah, I can think of some people who will be done with this show in less than 4 hours.
The audience?
He is one of the SpyHards. Also, did an amazing job moderating several panels at the TREKSPERTS stage at Star Trek Las Vegas. We're thrilled to have him with us. Ladies and gentlemen, Cam Hardy.
Hey, Cam Hardy, Cam Smith.
Cam Smith.
Jesus,
Scott Hardy. Scott Hardy, Cam Smith. God, I can't stop the music. I'm so sorry. Cam Smith.
And Laurel.
I'm so used to you guys like being like the Binars, where it's the two of you, like 1001. But in this case, of course, it's Cam Smith.
That's
Not
right.
to be
It's like
confused with
Tubix.
Scott Hardy.
It's like a Tubix situation here, right? So
We love you
together.
guys.
No.
They did such a great job with. If you haven't heard the panel on our man Bashir and Spy Trek, you got to listen to SpyHards. It was a really great panel they did, and a great podcast. We love the SpyHards. So thanks for joining us. This is the first time on our podcast, and we're thrilled to have you.
Thank you very much.
We also have with us, I'm very happy, making her debut on this podcast, is the longtime Star Trek fan of many Star Trek series and an expert in popular culture. It's none other than ZAZIE Sales. Welcome, ZAZIE.
Hello. Thank you so much for inviting me on.
Okay, well, we're happy to have you. And last but not least, he's the co-host of the Kid Stays at the podcast with Kate Miller, someone I know who has incredible taste in Star Trek. It's none other than Isaac Altman. Isaac, welcome to the podcast again.
Oh, good to be here. I'm excited to say things.
To say things, no doubt,
yes,
no doubt.
I've prepared long and hard.
Well, I know there's a lot to talk about, so I want to really dive in. But first, before we do that, because this has been a big subject of conversation throughout the countdown, Yacht Rock on Max. What did we think of Yacht Rock? Jesse, did you see it?
I did not see Yacht Rock, dude. I did not see it.
Okay.
I did not see it.
Okay, I see some kind of reaction.
It is one of the greatest documentaries ever made. In fact, my friends and I went to see Three Dog Night and Little River Band at a winery in Northern California. So I'm all in on the Yacht Rock.
Okay.
It was fantastic.
It was pretty fantastic.
Did Three Dog Night and Little River Band know they were there?
They did know. Now, there's only one original member of Three Dog Night left.
Yeah. One of the dogs.
One of the dogs.
Just one dog.
Let the dogs out.
But he sounded amazing. He was like 78 or something. And then there are no original members of Little River Band left. But
So they're tributaries is what they are now.
Yeah.
It's amazing when you have these bands that played great music that suddenly call themselves the same thing, but can no longer play the music that was so good in the 60s. But when they attempt to play it today, even though they don't have anyone from the original version of the band, they can't really seem to get it right. Anyway.
It didn't matter because the audience basically, I mean, we're all singing Reminiscing. It does not matter.
Yeah, so you're not even hearing the bands. Yeah.
Well, which is what you have to do when there are no surviving members of the band.
No survivors.
Or they've been kicked out of the band. They're not welcome. Right? Sometimes that happens.
This is an Australian, easy listening, pseudo country-ish pop band. There was no drama.
There's no Roger
No
Waters.
one's kicked out. They just die or leave.
Oh.
Okay, well, there you go. Okay, so I want to say Dr. Beat Drums said on one of the social channels, this is my favorite time of year when the Inglorious TREKSPERTS holiday episodes carry me right through to Easter. So the gauntlet has been thrown. By the way, speaking of Yacht Rock, the other thing that I talked about that I absolutely loved, and it's worth mentioning again, is the podcast 99% Invisible is doing a breakdown of the Power Broker over the course of a year. They just finished. But the reason I bring this up is because they were talking about, and those of you who from New York will get this, who have been to New York. They were talking about how Moses building the UN in New York, and that there's no other city they could imagine the United Nations being built in other than New York. And then they pointed out, well, that's not true because Starfleet headquarters is in San Francisco. And they went on a whole rant about how great it was that even trumps the UN because the Starfleet headquarters in San Francisco, and what a big deal that is. And I was like, I was not expecting there to be peanut butter in my chocolate, but here I was listening to a different podcast, which I thought no chance of mentioning Star Trek. It was this erudite podcast about a great book by Robert Caro, and then all of a sudden it becomes this long Star Trek conversation.
Well, that's why we've never seen the United Nations in Star Trek, because it's been abandoned and it's a run-down old building now.
It's a rundown old building. Well, I don't know. Not as long as we keep watching North by Northwest. Okay, so listen. This week, we're on the heels of something that actually really aggravates me. People have been referring to this new MOW, that stands for acronym for Movie of the Week, as a Star Trek 11. Okay, movie is not Star Trek 11. It's a TV movie, in this case, streaming. And we're talking about a movie called Section 31. I'm curious to get some insights from all of you as to what you thought. I just loved it. I thought it was fantastic, and I can't wait to see the next installment in this saga. But I'd love to hear your perspective because, of course, the reviews were so absolutely scathing and vitriolic across the board, even from the people who say, I like everything that's Star Trek. So, Kay, you look like you're chomping at the bit to tell us what you thought.
I do?
You do.
You do.
Okay. So I want to preface this by saying that I decided to do Dry January this year. I did Dry January through the inauguration. I did it through the fires. I did not do it through all of Section 31. But I also would like to say that as somebody who's worked in television for 100,000 years, it's hard for me to point the finger at anybody other than the machine for the failure of Section 31. Because it's all these people are too good to deliver whatever happened on that screen.
Okay, well, Cam, you are someone who is very well versed in spycraft, espionage, great spy movies. You could argue that Section 31 was trying to be Mission Impossible, meets Star Trek. What was your takeaway after watching it? I presume you did watch it.
Yeah, I thought this was a deeply bad movie. Deeply bad, like at a level that I was honestly shocked by, because look, the marketing, the misfit angle, it was pretty eye-rolling stuff. It felt like kind of off-the-shelf Guardians of the Galaxy or Suicide Squad. But then you watch the movie and you're like, oh, no. I give points to the marketing department. They had nothing to work with. And this is what the angle they came to sell it. They tried to sell something versus this, which... is it a Star Trek thing? Not really. It's barely related to Star Trek at all. But you know what? That's fine. They wanted to make like a 90-minute action movie sci-fi thing. Fine. They want to be maybe more open to just general audiences who will tune in for something like this because Michelle Yeoh's in it. Fine. They failed on every conceivable level. The action's terrible. The comedy's terrible. The writing is embarrassing. The direction was all over the place. It felt like it was patched together. And by the end, I'm just like, what was their goal? Like, it's not going to work for Star Trek fans, but anyone who has even a passing familiarity with like a streaming action movie, like, I don't know, like the Chris Hemsworth ones on Netflix, would watch something like this and be like, this is terrible. Why would I watch this?
Okay, so it was no Yacht Rock is what you're saying.
I haven't seen Yacht Rock, but I'm going to say Yacht Rock is better.
Okay, so Jesse, you were in the room when they were putting the skin on the bones of this concept and obviously developing Michelle Yeoh's character and the idea of how Section 31 potentially would be used in Discovery versus the way it was used in Deep Space Nine. Well, what can you tell us? And sort of what was your perspective having watched this with some distance? It's been quite a while since you worked on Discovery and you have mixed feelings about that experience. I just wonder, what was your takeaway? You may be more sympathetic to what goes into producing a telefilm like this.
I loved it. I thought it was incredible. I thought, Erica and Bowie, who were the baby writers on Discovery, I was excited to see they got story by credit. And I worked briefly with Craig Sweeney, who got screenplay credit. And Olatunde, who directed it, was awesome. He was the directing producer at Discovery when I was there, and he was terrific when I was there on that show. And I thought the cast was terrific. They really showed up and put their all into it. And it's amazing that Michelle is still part of the franchise and that she's excited to do it, because she really was supposed to die in the, first episode of Discovery, but she's been, kept alive in such a great way throughout all these shows. So I think that's super exciting. Thought, I'm just excited to be here and part of the.
Well, I got to say, when I said I loved it, I was being facetious.
That was the craziest hostage video I've ever seen.
Isaac Altman, what do you think when you hear what Jesse has to say?
I'm very confused. I think we watched separate movies. I wish I watched the same thing he did, but it was an experience, and I got to spend 90 minutes doing something, which was nice. But I was very surprised about certain aspects. I wasn't expecting a Star Trek movie to end with a "Your Mama" joke, but that's you felt it was really in the vein of Suicide Squad or Guardians of the Galaxy, but done badly. Yeah, I mean, if I wanted a movie
don't put words in his mouth.
Well, if I wanted a movie in the style of James Gunn, then I would be waiting for Superman, which I am. So I think I'll just stick to The Basement until July. But well, Rob, I know you have very strong feelings about this, and I'm sure you've talked about this on your show. But we'd love to hear sort of your take on the Section 31. I was going to say travesty, but
I retweeted what Al Jazeera reported yesterday. Was that Xi Jinping released an official statement saying that after watching Section 31, it was obvious that the Chinese treat the Uyghurs far better than Alex Kurtzman's secret hideout, CBS, Paramount, Skydance have treated Michelle Yeoh. And Xi Jinping added that you fuckers ruined Super Cop 3 for me.
Wow, that's harsh, Rob.
So I didn't say it. That was just what Al Jazeera reported. So clearly, no. I'll tell you something. You have 59. Star Trek will turn 59 in September. You have hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of hours of really great Star Trek programming that has inspired people since 1966. And there is comics, there is novels, there are movies. We talked about Ashley Inter-Arman Silent Lieges, the second great, and that is a Cicero quote, which means in times of war the law falls silent. And I wonder, while watching Section 31, I wonder if anyone who was involved with the show had watched any previous Section 31 episodes that were made for Star Trek that were not made after 2017. Because I didn't see any evidence that the intelligence and the wit and the writing that had existed beginning with Deep Space Nine and in David Mack's Section 31 Star Trek novel Control, which was the uncredited basis for the entirety of season 2 of Discovery, was cited. And it made me sad because Star Trek represents something much better than what we received this past week. And you know what? Like Vito Corleone said, I'm going to blame some of the people at that studio. And if they should get struck by lightning, it's not my fault.
I do want to.
It's also Paramount, by the way.
I do want to talk to some people who might be more charitable. Before I do that, Ashley, it's one thing to hurl, sling, insults and just, but we know how hard it is to make anything in this business and the challenges of producing and casting and writing and the limitations of budget. But, why, in your opinion, what was your takeaway from watching the show and why it did or didn't work?
Now, look, I'm not saying that Section 31 should be hauling garbage. I'm saying it should be hauled away as garbage. Look, on every conceivable level, this movie is a failure as a spy movie, as an action movie. There's no intrigue. There are no surprises in the plot. There are no stakes that we haven't seen before. None of the stakes really become personal, except in a way that feels ham-fisted and silly and leads to some embarrassing scenes that Michelle Yeoh basically has to tough her way through. the directing is, I think Cam said it, it's all over the place. And by that, I mean, it's not good. It doesn't look good. The choices are inexplicable as a production. It doesn't look good. It's obvious they spent a lot of money, but it's like they got somebody to, I don't know, with the worst taste in the world to spend a lot of money. Okay, but I'll tell you what to me encapsulates the whole thing, other than the fact that it took me forever to kind of piece together the timeline of this thing and what year it had to take place and why that made no goddamn sense at all, even on its own terms. This encapsulates everything. There's a huge section of this movie where they are on a planet where fire just explodes for no damn good reason out of the ground. Now, okay, call it Los Angeles. But you know what? Also on this planet, it is absolutely covered with dry, dead vegetation. Does anybody see the problem? It's just exploding fire, and there's fuel everywhere. And there's no reason.
But you know why that is? Because they film in Toronto, and they have so few exterior locations they can film at. So they can go to a rock quarry. They probably have two places they can go outside.
Visual interest, but
and it's ridiculous. So it's like, oh, we can enhance this with visual effects. That's the problem with shooting in Toronto. And not shooting these in LA.
Other things, like
also young Khan in the mid 24th century lives in Toronto. They could have gone to get him. They could have gone to the Eugenics Wars program and brought him into the show.
I want to keep things on track. And Darren, I know you have strong feelings as well about having it. Any thoughts, particularly from the art production design perspective, of which you are so well versed in?
I won't comment on the art direction. It certainly, there is a lot of it, and good for them. They certainly were able to give people work for a few months. I was just a little confused because I hadn't seen Section 30, so I couldn't keep up with the story.
Okay.
But I was surprised to see that the young Philippa Giorgio spoke English much better than the older Philippa Giorgio. And I'm just wondering, was there part of the story that could explain that? But
she lived abroad for a number of years.
Okay, that's great. I think that I tried to watch it the first time. I didn't get past 30 minutes. I went back and I watched the rest of it. And I was just baffled by everything that happened in it and all the unfunny quips and annoying characters. But other than that, I loved it.
Is the colloquial expressions that I've often criticized in this show, not attempting to make it sound like it takes place in the 23rd or 24th century, but rather, it's more akin to like writing Clueless with, it sounds like it was, filmed. Some of the comments and the dialogue is just, it's terrifying. But I want to turn my attention to people who might have maybe liked it or a little more charitable. So I want to start with you, Zazie. You've come to Star Trek more recently than some of us who, are more ancient. But tell us, what was your impression?
Well, full disclosure, I actually did not watch the movie, but now I really want to. Yeah, I mean, Section 31, the organization, not the movie, but like the organization within the Star Trek universe is such a cool concept. And I've loved everything that we've seen of it from the, TV shows, all of the episodes about it. So I think that it's like a really good idea for a movie, So I'm curious to see how they pulled it off because, that could be something really great. But yeah, I do like a lot of the more recent Star Trek stuff. In particular, I've really loved Strange New Worlds. But I am also, my favorite Star Trek series is definitely the original series. So
that's all we needed to hear.
Good. You can stay.
No, I've seen pretty much every episode of Star Trek probably ever. And yeah, my heart lies in the 60s, but I like it all.
Well, it'd be interesting to hear what you think. I mean, I think one of the things we didn't talk about is it takes place for billing itself as a movie literally on 3 sets. First act is in the bar. The second act is on the planet, and then the third act is on this small spaceship set. I mean,
that was
there's
a bar?
no scope to it.
I thought it was Who Wants to Be a Millionaire set.
Okay, Jeff Bond, you have been adamant that, unlike a lot of your peers, have been much more charitable with a lot of the more recent iterations of Star Trek. So tell us, why did you love Section 31?
Tell us, Bright Eyes. Well, I didn't like it. How many of you have seen Borderland?
That's what the trailer looked like, right?
Yes. It's very much like it reminded, particularly with the final cameo, it really reminded me a lot of Borderland, which is, I think, like an incredible achievement in the annals of bad movies. But on the other hand, I think, like, to me, this is just a failed pilot. It's not like the fact that people are referring to it as like, whatever, Star Trek 11. I get that you could be infuriated by that, but to me, it's just kind of a joke. It's not important enough. It's the failed, end game of a show that never happened. We can't. I mean,
so you're saying it's like The Cage, but different?
Well, no, because that developed into something. I mean, on the positive side, they did one thing in this that I always wanted to see in a Star Trek show or movie, which was to show a whole army beaming onto a planet's surface. They didn't do it the way I wanted them to do it. I would have done it quite differently, and I sort of didn't love the way that they did it, but I love that somebody finally did that. That's a cool idea. And
because apparently that's how you become emperor in the mirror universe, by winning the Hunger Games.
None of that made any sense. I mean, I will say, first of all, clearly people kind of ruminated for years about what this show was going to be. And I think that like a version of Guardians of the Galaxy was probably the last thing people thought this was going to be. They thought it was going to be something with spies and intrigue and the dark, underbelly of the Federation. And I think that, the one sort of Star Trek-ish element in it is the idea of this, Hitlerian mirror universe emperor, finding some kind of redemption in humanity. And that's a nice idea, but I agree it wasn't that well executed. And when you have that, encapsulated in all of this ultra wacky, super broad comedy, and comedy is subjective. There are people, at least 6, that I've seen on the internet who enjoyed this show. So the idea that it was universally, hated, there must be at least a few people who thought it was okay.
I've never seen. I mean, if you look at the reviews of on any.
Well, did you read Robert Lloyd's review in the LA Times?
No, I'm talking about Variety, Hollywood Reporter, Deadline. Everything was scathing.
It was very much not liked. But the idea that this is like some apocalyptic, event and this is the death of Star Trek, I think is a little exaggerated.
Can I interject?
Yeah, go ahead, Kay.
Because I really like the idea of the setup that they were trying for the show. I don't think the execution worked. And I think, the team felt very Guardians of the Galaxy. I didn't really get what their skills were because they didn't have spy skills. Like you got a guy in the RoboCop guy who just runs through walls, which does not seem like a good kind of spy thing to be doing. But what I really liked about the potential setup is the idea of this Starfleet political officer essentially having to be a part of this team and kind of rein them in a little bit. Like that's a really cool dynamic.
Yeah, and I did like their Rachel Garrett. I mean, other than a
She
couple.
didn't need to be Rachel Garrett. There was no need. But like Casey Roll, I love her so much. She's amazing in everything. I don't know why she was Rachel Garrett. I guess just because they thought that would be fun. But I
it was
love
nice
that
somebody remembered Rachel Garrett.
Well, the timeline also doesn't work out with her.
Yeah.
No, it doesn't.
And it
That's a
contradicts
whole other
everything that was set up in Deep Space Nine about what Section 31 is and, and how it operates. But regardless, it's like, it just like keeps name dropping. It's I think, the frustration we have with a lot of the more recent Star Wars iterations is they just name drop things, to get, benefit from the goodwill that these characters had over the years. And it's the same thing with this, where it's like, oh, we're going to mention these characters that you love because now you have to love our version of the character. Like Rachel Garrett, for instance, but they do it throughout. There's a whole bunch of name dropping and allusions to other Star Trek things. Even, this is not to give away anything. At the end, they're going to Turkana 7, which is like Tasha Yar's Turkana 4. Yeah. Tasha Yar's home planet. It's like, it's just the Easter eggs are absurd.
Guys, can we talk about that? I mean, when they go, the bar literally folds up and flies away. Why? Why are they going on the boat? Sorry, I can't stop.
Mark, also, it's the whole idea here with Section 31 and Emperor Georgiou. They're sequels to Star Trek episodes. And Empress, she's from the Mirror Universe. And what's really interesting, at the end of Mirror Mirror, which is a fantastic episode of television written by Jerome Bixby, Spock comments to McCoy and Kirk and says, "It was a lot easier for you as civilized men to behave as barbarians than it was for barbarians to behave as civilized men." And if I was tasked with the idea of taking a character from the Mirror Universe who had to come to our universe and figure out a way to make her bones here in our universe, so to speak, it would have been interesting to follow that idea where she has to find her civility and her civilization, her how can she get by in our civilization? That could have been an incredibly compelling story that Michelle Yeoh could have played. Also,
I thought that they did that really well on Discovery. I thought that they built out the Mirror Universe as well, and
holding up his hands in triumph.
I gotta disagree. I gotta disagree with that though, because she never changed. Not really.
Hey guys, really quick on Rotten Tomatoes. Are low numbers good or high numbers good?
It depends on if you're on the show, then the low numbers are good.
Okay.
You want the high numbers, and it's so funny because here, Jeff was saying, "Well, I saw a good review." Well, I'm glad because that leads us into our next conversation. So this week, to commemorate the Section 31 debut, Alan Sepinwall, who is a TV critic that I usually enjoy quite a bit. He chronicled Breaking Bad and The Sopranos and Mad Men. Very, very, very good, talented writer. Attempted to do his list of Star Trek movies from best to worst. So I'm going to read you the list, and I'd love to get your individual thoughts on how he got this completely wrong. Because, these lists happen every once in a while, and, they're usually, usually you just by accident tend to get a few things right. But he seemed to have missed it completely. Okay, in the 14th slot, what he deems the worst Star Trek movie of all time is Star Trek V, The Final Frontier. Number 13, okay, well, it's the official list. Number 13, Into Darkness. That was the second JJ movie. Number 12, Nemesis. Number 11, a movie which is not a Star Trek movie, but is on this list, Section 31. Number 10, Insurrection. 9, Generations. 8, Darren, cover your ears, Star Trek.
I know what it is.
7, Beyond. 6, Star Trek 3. 5, Star Trek 2009. 4, Star Trek 4. Number 3, First Contact. Number 2, Star Trek 6. And number 1, Star Trek 2, The Wrath of Khan.
Big
so I would look to you, Darren. What's your takeaway from this list?
This is a list for people who either don't like Star Trek or have never seen Star Trek or are just stupid. I don't know. It doesn't. Some of them make sense, but come on, Star Trek 3 at number 6. Give me a break.
Way too high.
Way too high.
And then Star Trek 6 is number 2. You got steam coming out of your ears.
Well, look, with the rest of the selections, nothing surprises me on this list. So what the Klingon says is unimportant, so I don't hear his words.
Cam, you're a big Star Trek fan, and maybe next to spy movies. But what's your takeaway when I read you this list from Alan Sepinwall and Rolling Stone this week?
I didn't find it that offensive a list, really. I guess I'm going to maybe stand out from the crowd. I can disagree with the ordering. I don't think Final Frontier is the worst of the Star Trek films. I think if Section 31 is being ranked among Star Trek films, it's the worst. Something like Star Trek 5 is still aspiring to kind of the feel of the original series, which will always make me like it more than something that's trying to kind of rejigger what Star Trek is to try to sell it, like Into Darkness. The one that honestly is so out of order with what I would place it as, but I still understand why it got ranked there, is Star Trek The Motion Picture, which for me is probably my second favorite Star Trek film. But I also am very aware of how polarizing it is and why most people find it kind of nap-inducing. For me, it's mesmerizing, though.
Yeah. Okay,
you are
Jesse.
correct.
Thank
Jesse,
you.
I see you nodding along.
As a kid, I swore I did not love Star Trek The Motion Picture as a kid when I saw it, but when I watched it recently to get ready for that con, I loved it. I think it's amazing. I really am a huge fan of Star Trek The Motion Picture. I think some of these, it is odd having Section 31 on this list, and I'm not a huge fan of Into Darkness. I am a huge fan of JJ's other movie. I thought it was great. I don't love Beyond as much as some of these other ones. Dude, whatever. Nick Meyer's movies are rad. That's great. It's good that people are digging them,
Okay, I see you shaking your head. What's your Rubik's Cube? How do you fix the list?
Well, look, I'm the only person here, and I know this, who loves Into Darkness.
Ooh.
Love it. I love it. Yeah, sit with that for a minute, guys.
I'm gonna have to.
I do love it.
Somebody just left the building.
Rob is gone.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks for articulating that on
Look,
camera.
it's not the first time, and it won't be the last time that he leaves when I say that. I absolutely despise Star Trek Beyond. I hate it. I've tried to like it. And the thing that makes me hate it more than anything else is that you start out this movie and Kirk is bored by his job.
Oh, thank God you said
He's
that.
bored by his job. Excuse me? What are we even talking about?
We can't do anything out here. What can we do?
I'm going to go be a half admiral somewhere. Come on.
That's okay. I was bored by the previous 2 movies too. So
yeah,
that doesn't
I've tried. I really have tried to like that movie. Mostly it's fine. I really like First Contact a lot. I saw it recently and I just think it's so much fun. Motion picture, the thing for me that, aside from the scope of it, it's a gorgeous film, that makes it really, really work is that Shatner gives this amazing movie star performance in it. He really understands how to take that TV character and put him in a movie.
Yep.
I think it's just one of my favorite performances of his. The rest of them, shuffle them around, whatever. I think Generations is better than a lot of people think it is. So that's my polarizing opinion.
Okay, well, listen, I want to talk to maybe we get a different perspective from some of our newer fans. So this would be for Isaac and Zazie. What are your take on the order of the Sepinwall list? I'll start with Isaac, because I know you hate it.
Well, we all agree Final Frontier is good. We all agree Motion Picture is good, so I'm not going to go into that. But oh my God, I can't believe I'm about to defend Into Darkness, but it's too low. It's the best Kelvin movie. It sucks, but it's the best Kelvin movie. It's I don't know. It's better than a lot of what Beyond does. It's better than.
Am I thinking of the same movie? Into Darkness, is that the one with Khan in it?
That's the one with my name.
The one with Benedict Cumberbatch.
They call him.
Yeah, I'm thinking of the right movie. That is not good.
No, it's not good, but it's better than the other JJ ones. But I don't think Nemesis is worse than Section 31 because at least Nemesis has like 2 good moments compared to Section 31's
What
zero.
are those 2 good moments?
That's a tough one, man.
I like the ending with Picard and Riker saying goodbye, and I like elements of the wedding at the beginning. Although after watching TNG, I'm not sure if I'm very happy with that pairing, but whatever. And then I think First Contact's too high. I enjoy First Contact, but it's not better than Voyage Home. And I also think that I think the TNG movies are like appropriately ranked. I'd switch Insurrection Generations, but overall, I'd say that was right. But the TOS movies are ranked poorly. The Section 31 is way too high, and the Kelvin movies are out of order.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks. What about you,
You're out of
Zazie?
order.
This whole court's out of order.
I agree with most of what everyone said so far. The only thing I would add is that I think The Voyage Home should be number 1. Some of you might disagree with that, but that's like easily my favorite Star Trek.
Bold words. That's interesting perspective. I think you probably get a lot of arguments here, but tell us why.
It's just so good. I don't know. It's like there's something about it that's so wholesome, and I love like the time travel element. I love seeing Spock in the 1980s, and I don't know. It's got everything that Star Trek should be in it. You know what I mean? Like it's silly, it's campy, but it's also like deeply profound and beautiful. You know? And yeah, it's like my comfort movie. I watch it quite frequently. So.
Well, maybe George and Gracie will show up on our top 10 Star Trek pets list when we revisit that in a few minutes.
Absolutely.
Jeff Bond, what do you think of Sepinwall's list?
Well, I've always had the theory that if you just mixed together elements from every Star Trek movie ever made, you'd come up with one great movie. But individually, I don't think any of them are, great works of cinema. Probably Star Trek 4 and the motion picture are the only ones that look like movies and feel like a real movie with a real budget. But I like parts of all the original cast movies for sure. I would place Star Trek 3 higher. I really love that movie, and it's got all sorts of huge problems, but it's got some of my all-time favorite moments and performances in the movie series. I think the visual effects in that are some of the best. And actually, Generations, I think the effects in that are much more fun than anything in First Contact. I mean, that First Contact it is more fun. I really disliked it when I first saw it. I was really disappointed because I felt like it didn't have the level of action that the previous movie had for everything that was wrong with that. So it is kind of a jumble for me. I hate Nemesis. I had one of the worst experiences watching that. I love half of Into Darkness. The first half of it is a blast. I like the 2009 movie. Those do feel like...
Of course, you have to recuse yourself because you wrote The Art of the Kelvin Universe. So you have royalties that hinge on this opinion.
Oh, yeah. No, believe me, I've never seen a royalty. And I get one that from Pocketbooks or something and once a year for a short story that says, you now owe us only $900 on your advance. I like pieces of almost all the movies. I certainly didn't really like any of Section 31, but I just don't consider it a movie. So I would rank the Next Generation ones much lower. Insurrection and Nemesis to me are at the bottom of the barrel.
Yeah. Okay.
Not something I would want to revisit.
Okay. Rob, a pretty wackadoodle list, isn't it?
Well, I'm going to say something controversial about, and I refer also. I think Zazie has a good point to make in her comments about Star Trek 4. I think the Star Trek film series has always been deeply flawed, and I think ultimately, Star Trek the motion picture was obviously flawed. We love it, but the way it was produced was flawed. then Star Trek II completely derailed what the Star Trek movie series could have been, because it offered the Ricardo Montalban's portrayal of Khan was so great. But what it did was it forced the Star Trek movies to be about antagonists. And you had to have like some operatic, larger than life villain. And Star Trek IV was really, and I did not like Star Trek IV when I first saw it. I was really sort of disappointed in it because of coming on the heels of Star Trek III. But in retrospect, the movie that people should have been looking at for Star Trek ideas was Star Trek IV. Because you didn't have an operatic antagonist. You had a situation that had to be solved. And at the same time, you had Spock dealing with his father and finding himself again, which was handled in a beautiful way. The time travel back to the past was wonderful. The only misstep there was making Sulu and Uhura, or Chekhov and Uhura, idiots when they didn't know where Alameda was. It's like, come on, man, you guys went to Starfleet Academy. But for the rest of it, the humor weren't those a gift from Dr. McCoy? Well, they will be again. That's the beauty of it. I mean, there's some really great stuff in that film. And I don't think any movie captures the essence of what it means to, when you watch the entirety of the original series, the feeling that it instills in you is the feeling that Star Trek IV instilled in you in one movie. It pretty much it took you on a journey that encapsulated, to me, everything that Star Trek represented. It might not have been as serious, like something like I Love the Immunity Syndrome, as you know, obviously. But if they had made
not like Scott likes Metamorphosis.
No, not like that. How could you? But if they had made a series of films that were as entertaining, but as Zazie said, had really some great profundity in them and delivered in a delicious science fiction wrapper with all the camaraderie and love, I think Star Trek might look very different than it looks now. But all the other Star Trek movies are all about defeating a villain. And that wasn't what Star Trek was. And so I think the list, regardless of it, to me, my list is always going to be Star Trek the Motion Picture, Star Trek II, The Wrath of Khan, Star Trek IV, and Star Trek VI. That's my list. And the rest of it is variations on a theme, and those variations were never fully realized for various reasons. Studio interference, what they had to do, what they felt they must do. I mean, there's nothing in First Contact that wasn't done infinitely better on The Next Generation itself. I mean, once you get to I, Borg, you've said all you need to get done with the Borg. Everything else is just variations on a theme. And it's frustrating to have a series based on a show that I've loved so much, where we now have, I guess, 14 movies, where all the movies, with a few exceptions, were, I think, unfortunately, guided by a wrong-headed idea of what a Star Trek movie had to be. And I think Star Trek IV, which, by the way, at the time, was the most successful Star Trek film, and why didn't they use that as a template rather than Star Trek II, which cost a little less and made less money?
Well, they did. They tried to do it on Star Trek V. They tried
with humor,
a wacky comedy.
Because they took the wrong lesson.
Understand it.
Well,
That
but the
wasn't
funny thing about, yes, but that was a studio mandated thing. If you read Shatner's original treatment for that, Act of Love, it's really good. But he didn't have the money to do his ending, and he was fighting, the tone of that movie is fighting against itself because the studio mandated wacky humor. But you're right, it could have been that way, but you still had Cybok. You still had this messianic villain figure.
Jesse, you're shaking your head.
Yeah, look, all those movies I think were incredibly challenged by the architecture of the system that was trying to make it. It was kind of like the inmates running the asylum with, and I've worked with complicated casts, as have you all. All the cast members wanted to be the stars and wanted to be the directors and wanted to drive the story. And the studios have always hated nerd shit. They always hated Star Trek. They don't want to give him any money. They don't want to give him any respect. They don't want to take him seriously at all. It's a miracle that any of this shit turns out good at all. And everything that Robert was saying, I totally agree with. And I think that's very insightful that to call out Star Trek 4 for really capturing that vibe. And I'm glad Zazie spoke up about it because it really does. And that was something too that on Discovery, it was really challenging to convey what Star Trek was to people that hadn't seen it or didn't understand it or couldn't wrap their heads around it. It was like, you don't have to have a villain. It's all of us working together to try to solve these incredible challenges and figuring out what we can bring and be greater than the sum of our parts. It's this, very aspirational thing. And so many movies and TV shows are based around conflict, interpersonal conflict with the core ensemble. And Star Trek was different in a lot of ways. And that was been very hard for many regimes to process because they don't come at it from a place of knowing it and loving it the way we do.
I think it's a mistake to blame the studio for trying to keep the budgets down on these because
it's irrelevant. That shit's irrelevant. The budget is irrelevant because because it's always the concept. The concepts are always flawed.
But the reality is the movies only made a certain amount of money, any of them. Yeah. They had a ceiling, and they hit the ceiling time after time.
Yeah.
But the studio wanted a Star Wars. They wanted that, and they always thought that it could be a Star Wars. It's not.
No, it never could
has
have been.
And that's the problem. What they had these urges to bring forth a Star Wars when that is not going to happen ever.
Well, that is a great transition to the fact that for the last 10 weeks, we've been celebrating what we love about Star Trek with our top 10 lists. So when we come back from this brief commercial break, we're going to talk about where we got it right, where we got it wrong, and maybe what you would have picked instead for our top 10 countdown list. So stay tuned. We'll be back in a moment. And we're back. We're back with our panel of rebuttalers. I don't know. I don't think that sounds...
Rebutters.
The rebuttalers.
Not how you want to be.
That was part of the third British invasion.
The rebutman.
The rebuttalers.
Yeah. We'll just call you Oasis
concept.
and we'll
the
fight.
Rebutler.
Kay, you must be so excited that Oasis is back.
I cannot believe it. I'm going to Cardiff to see them.
No way. Are you
Yes,
really?
way. Yes. And
When?
I am going to the second date of the tour, so they will not have broken up by then.
That's awesome.
This is the year of the Gallagher brothers, and I cannot wait. I'm so excited.
It's no yacht rock. Yes, it
No,
is.
it will be
so
eventually.
much better. The funny thing is, I've said this on the show, I don't even like yacht rock. I just like the documentary. So anyway, our first week was Time After Time. This was our top 10 Trek time travel episodes. Number 10 was Past Tense from Deep Space Nine, a fantastic musing on the homeless crisis, which unfortunately hasn't changed much since the episode was filmed. And number 9 was Timeless from Voyager. Number 8 was The Moving Children of Time from Deep Space Nine. Beautiful episode about the cast being potentially stranded forever on a planet. Number 7, Tomorrow is Yesterday, where the Enterprise is spotted as a UFO in 1967 Earth by the Air Force. Number 6, Star Trek 4, The Voyage Home, Zazie's favorite movie. Number 5, All Good Things. Well, if we're going to call Section 31 a movie, maybe we should call All Good Things a movie. Maybe there have been like 25 movies. Chain of Command, Best of Both Worlds. Come on. Why is every TV show now Section 31 a movie? Give me a freaking break. It's barely a movie. It's barely a TV show. Okay, so number 4, The Visitor, the beautiful, the late Tony Todd, who's just marvelous in this wonderful episode about young Jake Sisko, who's lost his dad. Number 3, Yesterday's Enterprise, the return of Tasha Yar. Number 2, this is a controversial. A lot of people felt this should have been number 1, City on the Edge of Forever. And then number 1 was Trials and Tribulations. Again, I think at the time we said this was because we were talking about them as time travel episodes and the accomplishment, not necessarily the quality, because I think then City on the Edge of Forever would be our number 1. For our honorary mentions, this is individual picks rather than consensus picks. Rob picked Living Witness from Voyager. Ashley Edward Miller picked Little Green Men from Deep Space Nine. Darren picked Assignment Earth from the we call Star Trek, not the original series. I won't deign to call it the original series.
It's Teal. No, it's not.
And then I picked All Our Yesterdays, not because I particularly liked the episode, but because it was a great time travel episode in that the conceit of Mr. Ataz and the Tavakron was really cool. Okay, so I'd love to turn to you now. Where did we get it right? Where did we get it wrong? What did we miss? And I'll start with you, Cam. Why don't you tell us what you think? Is there an episode we missed or something you adamantly disagree with?
There is an episode that I think was missed. There's actually kind of two that stood out to me immediately, and they're both Voyager episodes. And Voyager is not my favorite Star Trek show, but the fact that two of them immediately popped into my mind was interesting to me. I thought Relativity was very good. We had the Captain Braxton ship and Seven going on a mission to actually solve a time travel issue.
Expect more in May on UPN. 7 of 9 is the hottest thing in the 24th century. And Wednesday on an all-new Voyager.
Take cover!
You'll see not one, but two of her.
You must apprehend him. He's trying to destroy Voyager.
It's 7 of 9, like you've never seen her before.
Stop him. Your future depends on it.
And twice the 7 means twice the action. She's dead. Voyager.
That to me stands out immediately, but also Before and After, which I think is really underrated. The Kess story, where we have her talking about the events of Year of Hell in advance, and it's kind of like the last good episode involving that character. Yeah. And I thought in both cases, those two really stand out to me as Star Trek doing time travel very well. Whereas one, I think the thing is, this list is very strong. It's not like I can say, well, guys, you got 4 or 5 here that I'd cut. The only one that I kind of had pause over was Tomorrow Is Yesterday from the original series, which I like, but I don't know hits the high bar a lot of the others do.
Darren, what do you say to that?
You're wrong.
Thank you for articulating that such a scholarly, insightful way.
The first reveal in the teaser of the Enterprise floating above the Earth makes it an iconic moment in time travel. And the fact that it's mistaken for a UFO is even more exciting and fun.
That's a great point. The visual of that is incredible. I guess I look at it more as an overall hour-long story, which one hooks me more, but yeah.
53 minutes, but yes.
I think Cam's got a great point there. And when he says it doesn't, time travel stories by definition have an extra added oomph to them. City on the Edge of Forever, we're literally talking about the erasure of the entire United Federation of Planets. And Year of Hell, the stakes are enormous. And in Tomorrow's Yesterday, and Darren, I love Tomorrow's Yesterday, I do. But it's an accident. No one's time traveling for any reason other than the fact that,
So is City on the Edge of Forever.
Lightspeed, yeah, but it was, McCoy went back, but our main characters have to succeed. I mean, it's literally the fate of the Federation itself hangs in the balance.
Which is literally an accident.
But Tomorrow Is Yesterday, but I understand. All I'm saying is I understand what our esteemed colleague Cam has to say about it.
I understand too.
It doesn't have the delicious gooey center that a lot of great time travel episodes have.
It has a cop ordering chicken soup. What more could anyone ask?
Well, the chicken soup is.
Well, I could ask for Roberta Lincoln, hubba hubba. You know what I'm saying? What's up? Okay,
Mark, your mic is off.
Muted. You may not
go back in time and turn on.
Shout out to Terry Garr.
Your targeting computer's off. What? I was just saying, with all due respect to, I think, I understand where Cam's coming from, but I will say, I think the reason that it deserves to be there, one is obviously, as Darren alluded to, the remarkable teaser, which is one of the great Star Trek teasers in the history of the show, which is you think you're on another show, maybe it's Mission Impossible, and then all of a sudden the Air Force jet spies the Enterprise in orbit around contemporary Earth, which is remarkable. And then, of course, the succession of mistakes throughout the episode, which leads to Captain Kirk, not being able to leave with Captain Christopher, but realizing that he will give birth to someone who is important in Earth history, and as a result has to rectify his mistakes. But I do want to ask, because Isaac, Cam mentioned the episodes Relativity and Before and After as episodes he felt could easily have been on this list. Do you agree?
Yeah, I do. I think both are better than like they're either more well-known prequels or successors. I think Relativity is better than the first time we see Captain Braxton. It's better than when Voyager just goes to the 90s. And I think Before and After is better than Year of Hell.
Imagine opening a window to the future.
Where am I? What is this place?
Then traveling backwards in time.
It's almost as if you're experiencing events in reverse.
Can one woman stop the course of events?
Voyager's under attack.
To save her people from tragedy.
They're dead.
Before her time.
Cass, we're losing her.
Slips away on the next Star Trek Voyager.
And I think it's like one of the few times Cass was actually, in my opinion, an interesting character. And I thought they were both some of the few good episodes, and made me worried that my favorite episodes of Voyager were like only time travel.
Okay, you look like you wanted to add something to that.
I think the list is great. I think Star Trek has historically done time travel really well in really interesting ways. For me, there's two aspects of time travel. One is the fun time travel aspect to it, like the actually going back in time. What can you what are the rules of that? What can you affect? But I think primarily the reason that time travel works for me when it works is because of the emotion involved, which is why I think The Visitor is one of the best episodes of television ever written. And I say this as somebody who's not a huge fan of Deep Space Nine. But I think that when you can do a time travel episode that really makes the character react emotionally in a different way than they would have ordinarily in their lives, then you have a successful episode. So but I think it's a fantastic list.
And Jesse, I would be remiss if I didn't give you credit, because I think that you co-wrote with Aaron Eli Collette a really interesting episode of Discovery, which is not a word I use in a sentence very often, and involving Harry Mudd, who is using a time travel catalyst to murder Captain
Lorca.
Jason Isaacs, Lorca. Captain Lorca, over and over and over again, which I felt was one of the few first season episodes that really resonated with me. And I thought that was a really fun episode.
Thank you for saying that, Mark. Yeah, it was a really fun episode. And, Aaron and I were really trying to show everybody what Star Trek could be, that there could be some kind of science puzzle. In our original draft, there was a little bit more of an emotional component as well, because we were also really trying to use it as a way to move Burnham forward emotionally, because that character was, a little complicated, to sustain on the show with the new regime and things like that. So it really was something that was fucking super fun to write and make. And I wish it got rewritten a little bit. Could have been better, very much like how Harlan feels about City on the Edge of Forever, which I think is an amazing... I think City on the Edge of Forever is my favorite. I think Visitor was incredible. But this is just to be that guy, and I'm that guy. I'm a man of a certain age. I loved Star Trek Strange New Worlds, Tomorrow and Tomorrow and Tomorrow.
I was going to mention that one.
Fucking love that episode, man.
Mm-hmm. There's been an attack in the past. You have to stop it.
Captain, I need to...
Not to be impolite, but who are you, and what are you doing on my ship? So you're telling me that there's an alternate timeline?
I think you're supposed to help me. We're on a mission to protect the future of humanity.
Whoa, 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 whoa! That was a person.
All right.
I got some eye sweats in that one. I like that show a lot. I get it. It doesn't, take you guys back to being 10 years old again, but I think that's a quality show. And I think that episode was strong. So I think that episode deserves to be on the list.
Zazie, I see you nodding along with Jesse.
Oh yeah, no, tomorrow is great. Yeah, no, I love seeing Lon is like one of my like new favorite characters. I feel like I always latch on to like that kind of character in Star Trek, the one who's like very sort of emotionally closed off. There's always like that archetype in every Star Trek series. You know, there's like Spock and Data, and in Strange New Worlds, it's Lon. So seeing her, explore her emotions so much in Tomorrow is really great.
It's really heartbreaking, that episode.
It is.
And what happens.
Yeah, it was for us too, for a totally different reason.
They sold it to canon. Again, like I always feel like I'm with the Inquisition. They should call it the Inglorious Inquisition.
Actually, a mirror universe episode of this podcast.
I want to say,
people are crazy.
What a delight to have you guys. This is why we have you guys on the show, to provide an alternative viewpoint on all this, because of course, this is nothing that you would have ever heard with the four of us, unless we were doing maybe worst episodes of Star Trek. But I think that it's wonderful to have you here to celebrate your love for this and what you find. This is the great thing about being a fan of Star Trek, that people can have all these different perspectives, and that while many of us are often very simpatico, we can have a completely different perspective, on an episode like that. Jeff, you're also a fan, I see, of that episode. This, of course, is the Strange New Worlds, where they go back to Toronto in the 21st century.
Yeah, and they remove the eugenics wars from actual history.
Well, look, my theory.
Sorry about that. Sorry, Mr. Robert Meyer Burnettt.
That's terrible.
I think that
I can't help it. History's history.
Well, exactly. That's the problem. It's become history.
Go ahead, Jeff. Go ahead.
Instead of a TV show. I love Strange New Worlds, and I've always seen it as kind of like an incredibly entertaining goof on Star Trek, with a great cast and characters, that I really love. I'm really glad that you brought up the Harry Mudd episode, which has the longest title and since the
and kudos to you for that, Jesse. Those great titles.
Yeah,
dude, that title was not mine. That's not my title. Deja Mudd.
I don't like the title, but
Deja Mudd was ours.
That's way better.
The Butcher Cares Not for the Lamb's Cry. That was my long title.
That's the title I love.
Right. But I'm really glad you brought that up. That was the Harry Mudd episode was my favorite of the first season of Discovery. I thought the filmmaking and that it felt like a Scorsese movie. I mean, the editing and direction.
Let's not get carried away now.
Was terrific.
The Irishman.
Boxcar Bertha.
There's.
That's funny. Go ahead, Jeff.
I would say there's one other, and I don't think it's a great episode, but it was the best episode of the last season of Discovery. There's a time travel episode. And what I liked about it is basically Burnham meets herself from season 1 and fights her. And I have not been a fan of the evolution of Burnham. I thought she was far more interesting at the beginning of the show. Then she becomes kind of this Earth Mother character as the show goes on. But she did Sonequa Martin Green did an incredible job of playing herself, her character from 4 years ago, and having those two versions of the character like butt up against each other. And it actually made me impressed with the character for the first time in 4 years, basically because I could see, wow, this character has actually gone through a huge evolution, and they're using that on the show. They're kind of facing up to that, and I thought that was interesting.
Well, can somebody please wake up Darren before we continue?
I'm quite awake, thank you.
Oh, okay. You
Listen,
look like you were.
I just want to say, I think that I'm not horrible about this, Jesse. I think tomorrow, I think the great stuff. I'll say this: Christina Chong is my favorite character. Lawn Noonien Singh. The fact that she's Lawn Noonien Singh is the dumbest shit ever. They could have made her any character. The fact that Akiva Goldsman wanted to do this is what's so annoying. Some ridiculously stupid, asinine stuff. Her character is so good, and she's a great actress. And by the way, all the interplay with her and Kirk in the past is great. Kirk playing chess and all that. but they had to go ahead and ruin it by her whole tied to Khan Noonien Singh and all this, the Romulans and all that. It would have been so interesting to create a historical event that they were drawn to, like a past tense, that added to Star Trek mythology, that didn't change Star Trek mythology, where they could have come up with something new, like the homeless encampments in past tense 1 and 2, something that would have advanced the mythology and showed these two characters. Because I loved that interplay, like when they were going into the stores and when Kirk was hustling chess to make money, all that stuff was delightful.
You didn't like Muppet Baby Khan?
The thing is, they didn't need that. That's how they denigrate. They had a great idea. They wrote those characters really well, and their relationship together was what makes time travel stories magical. But then they had to go encumber it with all of this retconning of canon, which was not necessary. They could have come up with something brand new that didn't contradict canon. They could have come up with something unique that could have advanced the past of Star Trek that we'd never heard before, like past tense did. And that's what's so frustrating, is that we watched writers in the past do the very thing that we love about Star Trek, and yet this time they took this really delightful episode with this great chemistry between these two actors, and I'm even saying this about somebody trying to recreate Shatner, but it could have been one for the ages, but then they had to saddle it with retconning canon.
It's a literal retcon.
Retcon. Oh, damn it.
Okay. So
I will say they're not wrong. I'm not a terrible person, Jesse. I recognize.
You're not a terrible person. You're a passionate man.
By the way, Hannibal's the greatest horror television series of all time, just so you know.
That's a fact. You're welcome.
That is a fact. And by the way,
I'm passing your name to the FBI right now. You're going on the list.
I can just say Brian Fuller has heard me tell him this many times, and I think one of the greatest crimes of all time is Clarice on many levels. Just saying.
Okay, so on that note, that was time travel. So it's interesting to get your perspective and how it varied and differed from our definitive countdown list.
9 more lists to go.
And so next up was our top 10 Trek comedies. Number 10 was Mud's Passion from the original series. Number 9 was from Lower Decks, I Executus. Number 8, Cupid. Number 7 from Lower Decks was Wedge Judge.
Wedge Judge. It's Klingon, damn it.
Okay. Number 6 from Star Trek, I Mud. Number 5 from Deep Space Nine, Little Green Men. Also could have been a time travel episode. Number 4, Cam likes this, Our Man Bashir. Number 3, Bada Bing, Bada Bang. Number 2, A Piece of the Action. And number 1, Trouble with Triples. And our honorary mentions were Rob unfathomably picked Gamesters of Triskelion.
Okay, that was bad. I'm sorry.
In the Cards from Ashley Miller. Rascals from Darren Doctorman. And
what?
I didn't write down what I picked. Okay.
Good job.
So this was the Trek comedies. So anything that didn't belong there, Kay, or that you would have added?
Are you saying A Piece of the Action is unintentionally funny? Because I don't really
No, it's
see it
intentionally funny.
Okay.
Comedy. It just didn't work.
You sure? I can't hear you. You're breaking up. I can't hear anything that you're saying.
I mean, all I can see is Kirk's fuzzy hat in that. But I think my personal opinion is that if you don't just say the funniest Trek ever is the entirety of Lower Decks, I don't know why we're even here.
Well, Ashley would agree with you.
That was a great episode.
I probably would agree with you, honestly.
That was a fucking great episode.
I would not only say that, and I'm really going to make people mad, but I would say any of Strange New Worlds comedy episodes are funnier than anything on this list.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Some of these are absolutely.
If anyone knows comedy, it's Jeff Bond.
Cupid and Little Green Men are like hilarious comedies.
Little Green Men is amazing. You take that back.
Yeah.
I mean, there's like a lot of charm in, and there's definitely some good comedy in Deep Space Nine. But I find, I certainly find Lower Decks funnier than any of this, and I find I'm sorry, I find Spock Amok and charades like a
Spock
lot
Amok
funnier.
is really funny.
Than
It's really funny.
Yeah.
It's really funny.
Yeah.
Charades too.
Yeah, that cast plays comedy
Oh my God.
beautifully.
Yeah.
It's great. I mean, come on, Vulcan mothers-in-law. I'm sorry, I
You know
found that
what?
hilarious.
There's another character
All of
who,
these
if her
old
name wasn't
comment-
T'Pring, she'd be great.
I do. I do disagree with Kay. I find a piece of the action a lot funnier than Trouble with Tribbles. But like, when Star Trek it was charming when Star Trek did comedy, but I would not find most of it laugh out loud, knockabout, wacky hijinks. I would give it most.
This isn't the wacky hijinks list.
Okay, you know what? Let me go to the one Jew on the panel who understands comedy. Isaac.
Hijinks are involved.
I've actually been on a comedy, so.
Okay. Oops. Wait.
Yeah, what happened?
Comedy.
Comedy ensues.
Just like his dad.
Okay. So, after hearing the slander of the Ferengi through Little Green Men, which really hurt, I think that there should be another Ferengi episode on this list. Take out one of the other ones. Who cares?
Which one?
I don't know. Lower Decks one. I haven't seen it. With Magnificent Ferengi.
Yes.
Magnificent Ferengi.
I think it's the best Ferengi episode in Deep Space Nine and there are many good Ferengi episodes, no matter what some people might say. And I think it's great. I think it's the culmination of a lot of Ferengi plot lines we've seen. We see a ton of characters we've seen before. Nog, Rom, Quark, of course, Zek, Brun. And I think it's hilarious. We just get to see them running around like a bunch of morons, and everything works out. And I think it's one of the best. I think it's one of the funniest episodes of DS9, and it should be on the list.
Yeah, it did make our guilty pleasures, however.
But it's a pleasure. There's no reason to feel guilty about it.
No, you don't think so?
No.
Okay.
Hello to your therapist, kid.
Yeah. Zazie, what about you? What do you think's missing, or do you not find Piece of the Action funny?
Piece of the Action is very funny. This is a great list. But I have one to add, and I think it might be a little controversial, but I'm gonna say Threshold.
Interesting. This is the Voyager episode where it's their answer to Genesis.
All great explorers
With 9.9. 9.95.
Cross a dangerous threshold.
Warp 10.
To break an impossible barrier.
Congratulations, you just made the history books.
But one man's journey,
Medical emergency.
one man's risk,
His body is going through some sort of mutation.
is another man's terror.
What's happening?
On the next Star Trek Voyager.
Threshold is amazing.
Hey, it's Bill Simmons from the Bill Simmons Podcast here to tell you about Michelob Ultra Courtside. It's getting fans closer to the NBA with a chance to win prizes like courtside seats, a trip to All-Star Weekend, and much more. Check it out at MichelobUltra.com/courtside. Michelob Ultra Superior Access, Courtside 24-25 sweepstakes, no purchase necessary. Open to U.S. residents 21 and up. Begins on October 1st, 2024, ends July 1st, 2025. Multiple entry periods. Visit MichelobUltra.com/courtside for free entry deadlines, and official rules. Message and data rates may apply. Void where prohibited.
This episode is brought to you by Amazon. Sometimes the most painful part of getting sick is the getting better part. Waiting on hold for an appointment, sitting in crowded waiting rooms, standing in line at the pharmacy, that's painful. Amazon One Medical and Amazon Pharmacy remove those painful parts of getting better with things like 24/7 virtual visits and prescriptions delivered to your door. Thanks to Amazon Pharmacy and Amazon One Medical, healthcare just got less painful.
I know it's considered, like one of the worst Star Trek episodes or whatever, but I love it. I mean, maybe it's not supposed to be funny, but I mean, how could it not be? I don't know. It's hard to tell, but it's so good. It's so funny.
Let me ask you, does that belong more on a guilty pleasure list or a comedy list?
I reject the notion that there's such a thing as a guilty pleasure when it comes to Star Trek. I think if you enjoy it.
You're a good person. You're a good person. Thank you for saying that.
Yeah. So no, I'd put Threshold on the comedy list. Yeah.
Okay, fantastic. Kay, did you have anything else you want to add?
Just with regards once again to Lower Decks, I honestly have not seen anything funnier than Twin Twains in a really, really long time. It's one of the dumbest things I've ever seen in a TV show, and it is just, you can't explain why it's funny. It is just so funny.
And Cam, what's missing from this list? What else is missing?
So, like the two Strange New Worlds episodes that were mentioned, I had on my list for sure. The other one that kind of jumped out to me was, I'm going back to Voyager, which was Tinker, Tenor, Dr. Spy, which I thought was a very funny episode where you had the doctor having fantasies about like the female crew members hitting on him. You have the amazing, I think one of the funniest moments in the history of that show is the sad Tom Paris wave. And it just is an episode that I think knows how to have fun with the doctor's personality in a way that good comedy does, because I find a lot of Star Trek comedy just kind of goes for broad laughs and it doesn't really work. But when it's grounded in character, it can really click. And I think that's a really good use of it there.
Okay, great. Awesome.
That's great. Those are great choices.
And speaking of great choices, now it's time to go under the missile Trek, which is with our top 10 Trek romances. This was episodes that we considered the most romantic episodes of Star Trek. Starting at number 10, it was The Outcast from The Next Generation, a groundbreaking episode of Next Generation. Number 9, His Way from Deep Space Nine, Attached from The Next Generation. Number 7 was Change of Heart from Deep Space Nine. 6 was Rejoined from Deep Space Nine. 5 was Requiem for Methuselah from Star Trek. Number 4 was You Are Cordially Invited from Deep Space Nine. Number 3, Metamorphosis from Scott Mance's Dreams. Number 2, you could argue, City on the Edge of Forever. Number 1 was This Side of Paradise. Again, I think we articulated why that was during the podcast. We'll see if you agree. And then
Jesse's shaking his head hardcore, man.
We'll get to that. Honorary mentions were A Few Badgeleys More from Ashley, Naked Now, Skin of Evil, and Measure of a Man from Robert Meyer Burnett, the Tasha Yar Gets Down with Data trilogy. Darren picked What Are Little Girls Made Of? And Mark picked the Captain Kirk Loves the Enterprise, Naked Time, and Star Trek The Motion Picture. So, Jesse, you're shaking your head.
Yeah, look, I think this is a great list. I actually think this is a great list. This Side of Paradise, I don't totally get it because I, just sort of remember it, that episode of being so odd, but it could work. I did love Spock Amok. I think was good in Strange New Worlds, and Tomorrow. I gotta say that if we're talking romance, they crushed it. In that one. But this is a good list. I think they've done a pretty good job. Even when you think about,
who the hell is they? It's like a wild bunch. We're sitting right here. They did a pretty good job.
I apologize. I was thinking about Star Trek delivering on romance.
Okay.
You also get a lot of heat for Shatner as repping the patriarchy, as he does. But I think there's a lot of emotion and real, connection between the various genders on this and species on the series that works.
Zazie, what would you swap out?
Well, I also kind of disagree that This Side of Paradise should be number 1. I take it off the list because yeah. Well, because she doesn't love Spock for who he is, right? She wants to change him. And I don't think that's real love.
No. Wow.
So you just described every marriage in America.
I don't think it counts as real romance, Totally.
But maybe she sees who he really is, and he only was who he really was with her.
Yeah.
In Elias Sandoval's encampment.
That's definitely what they're trying to imply, but who he is who he is. It's the Vulcan side of him as well as the human side of him. And, someone who's really in love with him would accept him for both sides of him, right?
Like Nurse Chapel.
But then how do you come down when he says, I was happy?
Yeah, for the first time in his life.
He says it for the first time in his life.
Well, I think that younger Spock is definitely going through some emotional turmoil. I think as he ages, into the movies and stuff, he finds some real peace, so I don't think that's the only time he was ever.
Only after he had his date with V'ger.
In that episode, aren't they under the influence of spores?
Yeah.
Yes, that too.
Jesse suddenly
doesn't
woke
work
up.
for me.
Exactly.
Yeah. No,
That's why I was like, why is this on the list? Aren't they all fucking on spores?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, they're not acting themselves.
You know, Jesse, not to put too fine a point on it, but I don't think a guy who worked on Discovery gets to be uppity about people using spores. Okay.
Kay, did you want to interject?
I live on spores. I eat spores.
I have so many problems with
spores.
I think first, the spore thing is a huge issue. I think that you need to go through the list and take out anything where one of the crew falls in love with a robot lady.
Mm-hmm.
That's a problem. Star Trek, the original series, did an absolutely shitty, horrible job with romance across the board. The only one that works even remotely at all is City on the Edge of Forever. I think there are a couple of Next Gen episodes that I would mention. Well, The Outcast is on the list, which I think is a great choice.
Fantastic. Thank you.
Yeah. Also, Half a Life, I think, should be on the list.
Oh, that's a great episode.
And I don't remember the name of the episode with the Trill and Dr. Crusher.
That is a host, yeah.
The host. That should be on the list.
With Oden.
No, because you know why? Because we have Rejoined, which is a better version of that.
I don't think that's I actually hate that episode, so I'm probably I just don't think I don't like any of the romance on Deep Space Nine. It just all squicks me out. It's very male gazy to me. So then beyond all of that, I would say 100% tomorrow, absolutely fantastic. And then just not episodes specifically, but character arcs. I think the Spock Chapel stuff on Stranger Worlds is fan-friggin-tastic.
Fantastic.
Right? I mean, I am not that person, and I want them to be together so bad. I can't
They're
even
crushing it. It's good.
They are. And also,
bastardization of those characters.
Oh my God, these guys. This is ridiculous.
Character.
Oh, look at this guy.
No, it's not.
And also, character. Robert Meyer Burnett.
It's not a bastardization of them. And also,
it is though. It is.
Rob, I'm speaking.
Uh-oh.
And also the arc on Discovery with Michael and Ash, I really, really loved. I absolutely love that. So that's what I would say. I just don't think Star Trek historically has done romance very well. And I think a large part of that is because they have not had a lot of female writers going, we don't really do that. So that's.
But look who wrote This Side of Paradise, Dorothy Fontana.
Yeah, but I still think that you're still under the umbrella of.
Who wrote The Lights of Zetar?
Yes, Margaret Arman, and it's terrible.
No, it's not Margaret Arman. It's
Sherry Lewis.
Yeah, Sherry Lewis.
Sherry Lewis. I think Lamb Chop. I think
the mother of Lamb Chop gets
Lamb
a
Chop
pass.
wrote it.
Okay, continue.
I mean that was basically it. I was very unhappy when I saw that this was a category.
No, that's great. What a great alternative perspective. Didn't see that one coming. I thought the controversy would be City on the Edge Forever being number 2, but not that This Side of Paradise should be on the list.
No.
Wow, fascinating.
Can I ask a question to Jesse and Kay?
Is this
What
like
does
a Columbo
God need
thing?
with the starship?
No. I would say Spock as a character. Do you think that he would carry on or fraternize with a member of his crew?
I think he's trying not to. But I think that where he is in his character, he is at war with himself, especially when he's coming out of the relationship with T'Pring, which does not.
Well, but that's a retcon for the modern. That's a retcon for modern audiences.
But I'm just speaking.
And I think based on an entire misunderstanding of Spock as a character.
But I'm just speaking to what they're doing with the character on Strange New Worlds,
which is wrong.
But didn't they take all that shit out of the canon? Like, you guys don't have to stress about it anymore. I thought they just unraveled canon. Isn't all the Kurtzman
it's
stuff
all
out of
canon?
So you guys can have all your characters.
No, but here's
calm down, Jesse. Calm down. This is what it's like in the writers' room.
Nobody can be happy because the show is never going to look like it did in 1960.
Okay, but it's not.
So you have to acknowledge that it is not history.
Okay,
it is
hang on
not
a second.
real. It's a TV show.
Okay,
it's a version of.
Okay, hang on.
Go ahead, Rob.
Hang on. I just want to say, the character of Spock, his whole thing is he's a man of two worlds. He has a human mother, so it's not like he is unaware of human emotion. He was brought up with human emotion, and he has to be the best human being and Vulcan at the same time.
When?
And so the thing is, in terms of like his sense of duty and all of those things, I don't think a character like Spock in a quasi-military environment would be fraternizing with members of his own crew.
But would a character like Spock in a quasi-military environment be yelling at the top of his voice on the bridge and smiling when he goes down to look at flowers?
Okay,
Jesse goes. No, Rob, wait for Jesse to respond.
Okay, sorry.
As someone who has done a significant amount of research into the military over the last gazillion years, they're crazy, man. They're totally fraternizing. It is not this TOS manufactured version of the World War II battleships that all those guys were trying to, posit. Like, there's all sorts of nonsense and shenanigans going on with these different people.
But not with a Vulcan. There's never been a Vulcan on Earth who's fraternized with his military.
Certainly not in a battleship.
I just saw it in this episode. What do you mean?
I mean in our world. And so you're talking about
make believe, right?
But here's what I'm saying. We now, before modern Star Trek began in 2017, we've had these characters exist from 66. We saw Spock evolve. We saw him change and grow. And I think what's happened is with this particular character, look, one of the thing I hate the most of what modern Star Trek did to Spock is when he turned human, or actually not when he turned human, when Dr. Mbenga gave him his own harp, his own lute, whatever, and said, hey, maybe you should take up music. It'll make you feel better. And I was like, are you trying to tell me, as a lifelong Star Trek fan, that some human doctor handed Spock an instrument and told him, hey, man, if you learn to play this, you'll feel better about yourself? Where Spock sight read music, you clearly had it established that he was a musician from almost birth. And music was an art form that he learned.
This is a weird hill to die on, Rob.
Yeah, so I want to ask Cam to jump in here. You're hearing this conversation. Where were you on the romance episodes?
Okay, so I think it's a very strong list. Although Requiem for Methuselah, I thought I was hallucinating.
I know.
When I saw the list, that one I got to admit, I'm sorry, Darren. I really did have a moment there with that episode. But the ones that jumped to mind, Justice for Nella Darren. I thought the episode Lessons from TNG was one very much deserving of recognition. Yeah,
I lost that one.
And the fact you have, the Inner Light, Picard ending that episode playing the flute alone, and then having him the duet with Nella Darren, I thought was perfect. Of him finding someone who's on his rhythm, basically. I thought that episode really stands out as one of the great Picard love story episodes.
I agree with you about Lessons. I know we've talked about why we don't think Inner Light is a great episode, but Lessons uses it in a really meaningful way.
Yeah.
Inner Light's a great episode, though.
No, it's not.
Yeah.
It is.
It's a great concept for an episode. Okay, so that was romances, but we still have a bunch more lists to get through, and it's so fascinating to hear perspective. So here we go. This is top 10 holodeck episodes. Now, this is episodes that took place on the holodeck. Number 10, Holo Pursuits from Next Gen. Number 9, Worst Case Scenario from Voyager. Number 8, A Fistful of Datas from Next Gen. 7, The Big Goodbye from Next Gen. Number 6, Bride of Chaotica from Voyager. Number 5, Take Me Out to the Holosuite from Deep Space Nine. Number 4, Future and Perfect. Number 3, Our Man Bashir. Number 2, Ship in a Bottle. And coming in at number 1, It Was Only a Paper Moon. Thoughts? Isaac.
What about our picks?
I don't have them there. I don't have them written
failed
down.
us completely.
Yeah.
So if you had brought it up, it wouldn't have been noticeable. But now I look like an idiot because I don't have it.
All right. Well,
go back and listen to the episode.
Overall, I think this is a pretty strong list. I think with holodeck episodes, there's not really much you can go wrong with. I like Worst Case Scenario. I mean, it's a little sad how that's one of the best Voyager episodes, but I still really enjoy it. And it's nice to see the characters in a relaxed setting where they're just kind of enjoying this weird thing that's going on around them. I enjoy Bride of Chaotica and how that, and just its take on, Flash Gordon serials. I think Future and Perfect is a little high. I love the episode. But I think when it comes to holodeck use, I think I prefer some others. And I also think that Ship in a Bottle should be under Our Man Bashir. I think that's a great episode, and I think that it should be number 2 and not number 3. But overall, I think it's a pretty strong list.
Cam, you agree with that? Our Man Bashir too low?
It's tough because Ship in the Bottle and It's Only Paper Moon are so brilliant that I wanted to fight for the spy one. Believe me, I did, but I was like, you know what? Don't know if I disagree. Especially Paper Moon, I would say is number 1.
Yeah,
the thing with holodeck episodes is it's a real hit or miss category, and I feel like you guys mostly had the hits to work with for a top 10. The only one, maybe a little bit of a dark horse, I thought was maybe worth considering, whether you considered a holodeck episode, was Practical Joker from the animated series.
Well, we did talk about that, didn't we, Darren, at the top of the show?
Yeah. In fact, that was my selection for.
Because it was the animated series episode that introduced the holodeck into the canon. Zazie, what do you think? Did we get it right?
I think this is a really great list. It's Only a Paper Moon absolutely deserves that number 1 spot. It's such a good episode. And, Ship in a Bottle is great. I love Bride of Chaotica. I would maybe add one, which is another Voyager episode, actually. Do you all remember Fairhaven, the episode Fairhaven?
Mm-hmm. Those are on my list.
Can you explain? Can you tell us what happens in that episode, please?
Yes, I will. Well, it's interesting, Kay, that you mentioned, getting rid of from the romance list anytime someone has a relationship with an android, because this is sort of along the same lines. It's Janeway. She develops this romance with a holodeck character, and it's about how she struggles.
Sean Rhys Davies?
No.
Oh, okay.
No. It's about how she just struggles with it, not being real, and she debates well, is this an okay thing for me to sort of indulge in, even if I know it's not real? But ultimately she's I really shouldn't go down this road. And I think it's a very interesting sort of exploration of, especially in this day and age when people are having relationships with AI online and stuff, it explores that idea in sort of an interesting way. So yeah, honorable mention, Fairhaven.
Kay, you said you had that on your list. What else did you have?
So both Fairhaven and Spirit Folk is the follow-up to that. And I find them, the thing that I just cannot figure out about those episodes is that Tom Paris decided he was going to create an Irish village on the holodeck. And I have no idea why. But
they were stealing his Lucky Charms.
It's like what the episodes of Murder, She Wrote when she went to Ireland. They're just ridiculous. But at one point, Janeway in Fairhaven actually, because she finds out that her holodeck boyfriend is married, and she just at some point says, delete the wife. So, and then in Spirit Folk, the holodeck breaks because they're using it too much, which definitely seems like something that would happen in Star Trek. So those episodes are, to me, just kind of silly fun. But I think it's a great list.
Yeah, that's funny. Go ahead,
I think with Voyager and the holodeck, it's very just interesting how they use it, because starting around like season, I think 3 or 4, they just start having like a new set per season. First they use a resort, then they do Captain Proton, then they do Fairhaven. And it's just like, it can be very hit or miss. And I think with Fairhaven, it's just like, I was like, oh, out of all the things, Ireland, I mean, the only time I think Ireland has been mentioned before in Star Trek was like Up a Long Ladder and like the Irish unification in 2024.
Yeah,
so I mean,
Rosa.
I don't think. Yeah, I'm not too.
That's Scotland. We'll get there.
Oh, was it?
Well, and Lieutenant Riley's history.
Oh my God,
that's right.
Lieutenant Riley.
Star Trek and Ireland have a fun relationship.
Jeff Bond, I think I made a mistake. I think number 4 was not Future Perfect, but was 100101. I think somehow this was an earlier list. I believe that was on our list, wasn't it, guys?
Yes.
Yeah, it was.
Oh, okay, thank you, Isaac. Jeff, anything we missed here, or you feel pretty good about this?
Well, I hate almost every episode on this list. I hate holodeck episodes. I agree.
Clearly we got it right.
I like the Practical Joker. I like Hollow Pursuits. And is Spirit Folk the one where they give the holodeck characters like inalienable rights or something?
Yeah.
Right. So I remember just being driven crazy by that, because I had so had it with holodeck episodes and how much time they spent on the holodeck in Voyager. And by the time they were giving the holodeck characters, their own individual rights, I was just like apoplectic. But having said that, at least there's an interesting idea there, which almost all of these other episodes, The Big Goodbye, I remember thinking, oh, this is cool. They're going to do, the holodeck on The Big Goodbye. And I was like, what's the story? There's no story. I didn't think there was any story in shipping the whole all the use of the Moriarty character. I thought didn't flesh out any of the potential there. So I find all these episodes very twee and annoying and a waste of time.
At one point, I was going to choose as my selection all of Enterprise.
Oh, that's
it
good.
was all a simulation. Okay.
Yeah. Good.
Yeah, all a holodeck episode. Okay. That brings us to an episode, Top 10 Strange New Worlds. Top 10 Strange New Worlds. These are planets in Star Trek that were really cool.
None of which are from Strange New Worlds.
That's correct. Yeah, go figure. Number 10, Planet 8924 from Bread and Circuses. Number 9 was Ryza, as introduced in Captain's Holiday and would be back in a number of episodes. 8, Stratos, the Sky City, which you can visit in Jeff Bond's garage from the Cloudminders. That's and Jeff, I got to give you a shout out.
The city, not the planet. Just to
your Stratos city is amazing. Number 7 is a Mini 7 and 6, and Vendikar from A Taste of Armageddon. Number 6 is Bajor, featured in multiple episodes, including Ensign Rowe, and of course many episodes of Deep Space Nine. Number 5, the Genesis Planet. Number 4, Kronos. Number 3, Vulcan. Number 2, Beta Omicron Delta 3 from Shore Leave and Once Upon a Planet. And number 1, we don't like to talk about this because it's the only death penalty still on the books, Talos 4. And our honorary mentions, since Darren asked, is Rob Meyer Burnett picked Janos 6 from Devil in the Dark. From Lower Decks, Ashley picked Cloaca. Darren picked From This Side of Paradise, sorry, Kay, Omicron Ceti 3. And I picked The Planet of Galactic Peace, Nimbus 3 from Star Trek 5. Sorry, Alan Sepinwall. Okay, so where are we on Strange New Worlds? What do you think, Jesse?
Look, I think those are good. I think those are all good. I'm really trying to wrap my head around it.
Interesting planets, strange planets. Kay, you look like you have something you want to interject.
Cloaca, 100%. It is the most
waka.
Top Chef world. I love it so much. I think it's fine. I really like Taste of Armageddon is one of my favorite episodes. So I really like the inclusion of those worlds, and also Stratos I think is a great one. But the rest, it's fine. It's worlds.
It's worlds. It's strange, and they're new with their worlds. What about you, Zazie? Any worlds you love?
I really love Ryza. I think it's funny that they just have a Las Vegas planet, or it's sort of like an anything goes planet. So
anything goes. Dun 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 dun.
I would love to see more episodes on Ryza. Honestly, I think that there's a lot of opportunities there for just like shenanigans. So
they clearly only had the lobby and the pool from a Radisson to shoot at.
Well, that's what we were saying. It gets much better in Let He Use Without Sin, because at least they went to Leo Carrillo to shoot, as opposed to Point Doom, instead of shooting on the back, like this terrible set, which was like 3 flats and a chaise. It was just the worst. Isaac, planets?
Yeah. Okay. I'm confused about one specific entry on this list.
Yeah.
Why is Genesis here? I have heard you complain about Star Trek 3 for years and about how they just go on a set for Genesis.
Because it's strange and it's new.
It couldn't possibly be newer or stranger.
Yeah, but I don't know. I think
resurrected Spock.
It's not about the execution. It's about the concept. Because if you just watch that video, that Carol Marcus recorded, A Report to the Federation, it's really, really interesting because it's the one time we see terraforming, which is an old sci-fi chestnut in Star Trek. So that was what appealed to us, not the execution of Star Trek 3, which, hey, there's a cactus there and Mr. Spock's casket. Jesse, any strange new worlds?
Look, if it's the concept, then maybe like the shore leaf planet, I guess, is kind of interesting for me. But look, I can't sort of get over the fact that it all just feels like, they're shot in the same part of, the valley. It's hard. It's
better
hard
in Toronto.
Yeah.
No offense, I like Toronto, to be honest.
On Discovery, this is, they wouldn't let us shoot outside. You can't shoot outside. They would not let us go outside. And we were like,
Toronto-y.
Dude, they would not. And we made such a stink about it. And Aaron and I did all this research, and we found this really cool looking little tiny patch of like weird desert. We're like, please let us open in like some bit of outside. And they're like, oh yeah, it's a good idea. And then they sent us to Jordan to film the part where they're walking around in the desert. After like making the biggest stink of like, Star Trek doesn't look good when you're doing exteriors. We're going to play everything on these sets. And I don't know, man.
Sorry,
Ashley? Ashley's ready to go to Jordan.
Oh my God. No, just the absolute, the unfettered stupidity of that statement. It's like, no, Star Trek doesn't look good when it's doing Planet Hell. When you actually go on location, it looks great. I mean, the problem with going on location in Toronto or anywhere in Canada is that you're always on Planet Vancouver, even if you're on Planet Toronto, right? And look, it's freaking pine trees. But I mean, my God, dude, I can't even imagine what hell you must have gone through, like having those kind of arguments with those people. That just sounds so positively ignorant. I can't even deal with it. When did I turn into Robert Meyer Burnett?
Hey, you know what? Is that such a bad thing?
Okay, that brings us to our top 10 Trek Star Wars episodes. These are episodes that involve war or space battles. And number 10 was One Little Ship from Deep Space Nine. Number 9, The Last Generation from Star Trek Picard, Season 3. Number 8 was Errand of Mercy. Number 7, Starship Down from Deep Space Nine. Number 6, Star Trek 6, The Undiscovered Country. Number 5, The Ultimate Computer from Star Trek. Number 4, The Siege of AR-558 from Deep Space Nine. Number 3, Balance of Terror from Star Trek. Number 2, Star Trek II, The Wrath of Khan. A lot of movies making their debut on this list. And number 1, it was Sacrifice of Angels from Deep Space Nine. And our honorary mentions were Robert Meyer Burnett, The Doomsday Machine, Ashley Edward Miller, To the Death from Deep Space Nine, Darren Docterman, The Enterprise Incident, dun, 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 And Mark Altman, the double feature 2-part episode, Azadi Prime and Damage from Enterprise. Okay, space battles. Cam, what do you think?
So Doomsday Machine would be on the list for me. Like, that's not even a question. When you have Kirk saying he's going to ram that ship into its gullet, like, that's a fist-pumping moment. So Doomsday Machine is making that top 10. The one thing is, and it's more of an affectionate favorite, 0 Hour, the finale to the Xindi War arc. We have Archer leading a team onto the Xindi weapon ship, taking it down, and you have Archer outrunning explosions in dramatic slow motion. To me, that instantly becomes the glory of what, like when you say Star Wars, it's very pulpy, right? It has that element of Star Warsian space opera, and 0 Hour has not only the combat aspect, but also the space opera.
Yeah, I mean,
it's a good call.
Does anyone else feel like there's maybe Enterprise or any shows after that maybe we're not on the list that should be? Certainly CGI has become more sophisticated in subsequent years. That there's ability to do stuff that perhaps is more elaborate, but did that necessarily create better drama? Obviously, according to our list, it didn't, but you may feel otherwise.
Well, it's the design of shots.
Yeah.
It's all about the design of, if you're going to have a space battle, how do you design that battle? And I think what's really interesting is Star Trek II, The Wrath of Khan, which are basically 2 3-masted schooners, sailing ships or whatever on the ocean slamming into each other's port and starboard sides. That became the Tiffany standard of Star Trek battles. And then, of course, later it changed. So
I think there was a reasonable reason we didn't put Doomsday Machine on it. It's because Doomsday Machine is not a war story. It's a revenge story. It's Moby Dick. Our adversary is not our equal. It is not thinking against us. It is just sort of this immovable thing.
It was my honorable mention, and it's still an existential battle against a foe.
Fair enough.
To revise and extend Darren's remarks again, like our metric was not.
You're not me.
Is there a cool battle in this episode? It was. Is this a good story about war?
But isn't there
that was the fine gradation of it.
But isn't there?
Go ahead, Jess.
On Voyager, wasn't there some crazy shit like where there was the Year of Hell or something like that? Again, like I'm not exactly.
Yeah, but it's not good.
It's not good. But that's the thing. Yeah, and don't yuck my yum. It wasn't even yummy. It wasn't even yummy for me.
No, Jesse, you're pointing out an episode that I think a lot of people would share what you're saying, who love that episode, who think it is a two-parter, and involving the time ship, and there's huge battles, and the Voyager really has its ass kicked. So you are not wrong. It was intentionally excluded from our list because we're not fans of that episode, but so many people are, and I think would want to see that on the list.
Because it really did. It sold the emotion. I watched some of these. It really sold. I felt
you're so proud of yourself. Congratulations.
Weight of war. I'm not a Voyager guy, right? But it that sold the emotional weight of war. I'm not like, what exactly are we doing? Is it like spaceships fighting each other? Is it like selling war? Like I don't know exactly what.
I'm very confused by what this list.
Yeah, is. What the list
is about. War. So I
know
war episodes.
If it's
it's war and space battles and Star Trek troopers.
I mean, Doomsday Machine was certainly the most visual battle that you got in the original series before they, even before they updated the visual effects. Plus, you have an incredible.
It isn't a list of battles.
You have an incredible military, conflict of military order on the bridge. I mean, that's all about war.
You don't have to sell us that it's a great episode.
If we were doing best Star Trek episodes, it'd be number one on this list.
That's what I mean. It's like, is this about like battle scenes?
No.
Because
it was just about how we felt about Doomsday Machine as an episode and what it was really about. That's the reason why it's not on the list.
But then why is the Ultimate Computer on the list?
Because those are war games.
War games.
War games.
Oh my God, you guys are.
Yeah.
It is about the utility of human beings, like making decisions in war.
Okay.
And
I can't see the confusion. Even Kay's nodding, right, Kay? You get it.
Yeah, I mean, I took it as war, which encompasses battle and everything else. I would include 2 Strange New Worlds episodes, of course, Under the Cloak of War and All Those Who Wander.
Ambassador, it is my honor to welcome you aboard the USS Enterprise.
Other Klingons call him the Butcher of Jagal.
The Federation believes that everyone deserves a second chance.
No, he's pretending.
Sometimes you pretend something long enough, it becomes the truth.
War doesn't leave you. It can bury itself, and it's always there.
All of us have to remember what we love most. We fight for them. But if we don't fight, we don't win.
You'd be on my
Rob?
list.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Look, Kay, my esteemed colleague, I've loved Kay for 30 years, and she's usually never wrong. And if it wasn't for her, we wouldn't have made Free Enterprise. Just saying. But her predilection for Strange New Worlds, no, but her choices are good. They're good. They're good. And with modern special effects, you can't deny that there's a lot of sexiness when you're watching. If you want to see that stuff, there's some good stuff there.
You know, it's funny. Both of those episodes actually are much smaller episodes. They don't have a lot of scope to them. All Those Who Wander is basically, I think it's the scariest episode Star Trek's ever done. And Under the Cloak of War is set in basically a field hospital. So they're not like big scopy episodes.
No, but you're right. I mean, and look, I will concede there is some good Strange New Worlds episodes. The non-canon breaking episodes that do showcase. The show has a great cast. There is no doubt those actors are great. I really do love them all. And those 2 episodes, you're not wrong.
It has great writers and directors. Chris Byrne, who directed that episode that you were talking about, Craig, is a great director. I've worked with him. He's terrific. And I think the writers and directors on that show are great.
So, Zazie, where are you on the space battle, Trek Wars, Star Trek Troopers episodes?
Yeah.
Anything that's missing that you would like to see on there?
I don't have a specific episode, but somebody mentioned the Xindi arc on Enterprise. I was like pleasantly surprised by how much I liked that arc. I thought it was really well done. In particular, I really liked how they showed how war can lead to and like foment racism. And I thought it was like really well done. And I actually, I graduated from college recently, and I was taking a history class. This was a few years ago, but I had to write a history paper on that subject, how like war sort of fomented racism in Europe in the 20th century. And I ended up making my entire first page about Star Trek Enterprise of my essay. And I was like, yeah, my teacher totally did not expect to just get like this word vomit about Star Trek Enterprise. But it was like an easy way for me to sort of like lead into the rest of the essay. And it was very much, my nerdiness on full display. But yeah, I do really like the way that all of that was handled on the show.
I really respect that. I have to tell you, I had a class in college, Contemporary Peasant Revolutions, and I did a paper on Platoon and Off Limits with Gregory Hines, and I forget what the other, wow. And that did the whole paper on the depiction of contemporary peasant revolutions in movies. So I totally respect the fact that you used Enterprise as the way into your paper at NYU. Very,
Zazie,
very
can I ask you a question? As a recent college graduate who has also delved into all of Star Trek history,
yeah,
how do you feel as a modern audience member, but going back all the way into the beginnings of Trek? You've already said you love TOS. What do you think Star Trek in its entirety has to teach us today? And do you still feel that TOS, say, is as relevant as the 3rd season of Enterprise?
Wow, that's such a big question. I mean, yeah, I definitely think that Star Trek is as relevant today as when it came out. I mean, I don't know, maybe even more relevant with all of this fascism on the rise. Yeah, I think that ultimately Star Trek, what it's about is inclusivity and diversity. I mean, it's IDIC, it's infinite diversity and infinite combinations. And I think that that's really what the heart of Star Trek is about, is acceptance and understanding. And yeah, I think that that's a lesson that clearly not a lot of people know today.
To follow that up, has it been difficult for you to go back and watch something that was made in 1966 and 69 and then come back to Enterprise, which the third season, which you're talking about 2001 to 2005. Can you watch both shows and still find them equally worthwhile or relevant?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think every iteration of Star Trek, every Star Trek series has, there's always so much profundity to it. And I definitely find each one in its own way relevant and interesting. And, you know, maybe this wasn't exactly what you were getting at, but in terms of like...
Oh, you've given me hope for the future. Just saying. I'm just saying, yes, it's been delightful to hear you say this. Please go on.
Oh, no, I was just going to say, in terms of like special effects, you know, special effects are obviously much better today on shows like Strange New Worlds and Discovery. But personally, I really love the rudimentary special effects on the original series. I mean, they don't look good, quote unquote, but I love it. I love like that you can see the texture of it, you know, like it looks like a real world and real people, real aliens. I also really love on Deep Space Nine, like all of the really intense makeup that they do for all of their alien characters. That's one of the things that I love about Deep Space Nine is that, like, you know, I feel like most other Star Trek series, most of the characters are humans, but on Deep Space Nine, it's a lot of aliens and they really have fun with it, you know, and you get all of these really cool looking characters like Quark and Morn. And yeah, so
Isaac, since Rob's addressing these questions to our younger members of the panel, barely younger than us. Perhaps you want to address the same question in terms of what speaks to you about the original series, and you know how you approach watching Star Trek as a younger viewer.
Yeah, I think Star Trek's relevancy, as you said, like as everyone said, like it's still around. It's still incredibly relevant. We see the world falling apart around us, but Star Trek emphasizes and it shows an optimistic future, that no matter how bad things can get, no matter if we end up going through like a nuclear war that kills an untold amount of people, things will eventually get better and that there's always hope. So I think, yeah, that like it, you know, even though Star Trek can get dark at times, even though it can even though it can stray from that optimistic view, all good Star Trek still has that hope for the future, even if things seem rough.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I want to move on to A Mind is a Terrible Thing to Waste. This was originally called Top 10 Trek Mindfucks Ever, but Darren objected to the mindfuck word, so we changed it to Top 10 Trek Twists Ever. So you whatever you call it, it's basically episodes with great Twilight Zone-like twists and WTF moments. So whatever you call it, that's what we're looking at. It starts with number 10, Whispers from Deep Space Nine. Number 9, Living Witness from Voyager. Number 8, Hard Time from Deep Space Nine. Number 7, from Frame of Mind from Next Generation. Number 6, Cause and Effect from The Next Generation. Number 5, from Star Trek Picard Season 3, it's Imposters. Number 4, The Survivors. There you go, Rob. Number 3, Future Imperfect. This is where Future Imperfect was. Number 2, The Menagerie. And number 1 was Far Beyond the Stars from Deep Space Nine, with honorary mentions from Rob Meyer Burnett, The Enterprise Incident. From Ashley Edward Miller, it was In Purgatory's Shadow from Deep Space Nine. From Darren, it was Amok Time from Star Trek. And from me, Mark Altman, it was Conundrum from The Next Generation. So let me ask you, Cam, what do you think about that WTF Trek twist list?
I think it's a really fun list. The one that I was looking at Whispers going like, I don't know that that's the one I would put on if I'm like, you obviously want to have like Far Beyond the Stars. That deserves, I think, number 1. But I was thinking Sound of Her Voice is the one that I remember really throwing me when I watched it. It's a very underrated DS9 episode.
The sound of fear.
Tell me you're on your way. Tell me I'm going to be rescued.
The cry of desperation.
Tell me I'm not going to die alone.
The resonance of hope.
Can you hear me?
Yes!
Thank God.
Now you hear it.
Tell her her heroes are on the way.
Now you don't.
There's something moving out there. It's getting closer. No!
On the next Star Trek Deep Space Nine.
It doesn't tend to get ranked on those top 10 lists, but you have the entire
Here's a Who.
Yeah. You have the entire crew falling in love basically with this person over the course of the story. You find out the impact that this stranded officer is having on all these various people. And to have the rug pull, just the gut punch that, due to time issues that are so classic Star Trek, that she's been dead for a long time and they're basically just hearing her voice delayed, I thought was just like, holy smokes, like sat forward on my couch, that kind of moment.
Ashley, to me, I think Cam just really motored through a hole in the list. Like, I think that is such a great pick that I would have, had we thought of it at the time, would have totally gone with sound of her voice over Whispers.
I think so too. I mean, Whispers is a great little mindfuck, and it's an incredibly clever twist on a very tried and true Star Trek trope. But I think Sound of Her Voice is just a great story, period. All on its own. So I think that's a great call, Cam.
Jeff, what about you? What would you swap out? What do you think we're missing from this list?
I love the twist in Duet, the Deep Space Nine episode, which I think is the first really great deep episode of Deep Space Nine.
That's true.
And you would say progress, Ashley, but I agree with you, Dad.
And this is not like a cosmic mindfuck, but I remember one of the biggest, to me, impactful twists in the original series is in Errand of Mercy, when you watched Kirk, arguing for war and butting heads with this Klingon and being outraged by these atrocities, and you believe that he's right the whole time. And the moment when Kirk is confronted with the fact that he's wrong, I think is one of the greatest moments in Star Trek, and one of the keys to what I love about that character.
Jesse, is there something you feel is missing, or is this list, does it cut it for you?
No, it's an amazing list. You guys hit all the hot stuff. If weird is part of it, Masks would be in there for me as one that just, I found haunting and disturbing and a mindfuck. And I love Joe Menosky. He's an amazing guy. And he told me, a lot of stories about making that episode. And I think that one could be on here because that one is a mindfuck.
Oh, never mind.
It comes later.
Yeah. So let me ask you, Zazie, you've been a champion so far of a lot of Enterprise, a lot of Strange New Worlds. Is there stuff from any of those shows that you feel is missing from this list?
I didn't have one from those shows in mind, but I have a different one in mind.
Please tell us.
Were you the one who said that you didn't like The Inner Light?
I think most of the Treksperts, it's not that we don't like The Inner Light. We think it's overrated.
Really?
I don't.
Yeah, Rob doesn't.
The Inner Light is great.
That's why you're not a Trekspert, Rob.
I do have one from Enterprise, actually. I don't know how I became like the champion of Enterprise.
Somebody had to be.
Don't you hate that? Suddenly get tagged with that label?
I do like Enterprise, but there's this one episode, this might be an honorable mention, but there's this one episode called Vanishing Point. I don't know if any of you know which one that is, but it's
Barry Newman. Great. Oh, that's Newman.
Yeah. By the way, that's coming out on a new disc, by the way.
Is it?
Sorry,
that was announced last week.
Crazy, dude.
No, go ahead. Tell us about Vanishing Point.
I think he's dead the whole time.
It's Hoshi Sato dealing with not wanting to use the transporters because they've just been invented, and then she does use a transporter, and it brings her into this bizarre sort of, I don't even it's hard to explain. It's very Twilight Zone-y, but it does bring up an interesting point, which is I don't think I would want to use transporters either, actually, if they were real. Like
let me ask you. I'm just curious because it sounds from what you just described very much like Realm of Fear, the episode with Barclay. Is it similar to that or is it different?
It's different. Well, because she gets like trapped in the transporter and has this weird dream, basically.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And it's well done, but it's also, it brings up something that I've thought about before, which is like,
never use a transporter.
Never use transporters if they were real. I mean, I'd be too afraid that like what's actually happening is that you're being killed and then a copy of you is.
Well, you are.
I'm going to prestige you. That's what you're saying. You're being prestiged.
I pitched that story to Enterprise before the show went on the air. And I pitched another transporter story, and both of them basically wound up being used, but they either forgot I pitched them but I'm still mad about that. I was going to have that whole episode was going to begin with one of their great, lunchtime scenes, except it was people talking about like, what really happens to you when you go through the transporter. And then they wind up dealing with a race of aliens that don't believe that anyone's gone through the transporter are real. They believe that they're zombies and they refuse to have anything to do with them.
It steals your soul.
Like that.
Kay, what about you? What's missing from this list?
I think it's a really good list. I don't know the Deep Space Nine episodes. I do know Far Beyond the Stars, but I don't know the others. I would add, well, first of all, I think Frame of Mind for me is my perfect mindfuck episode because it's such a something that they didn't do a lot in Star Trek, which is a very specific point of view episode.
Mm-hmm.
So I love that episode. I would add Night Terrors, which I think is a super fun episode of Next Generation. From Strange New Worlds, The Elysian Kingdom is really fun and weird.
All hail the king! The king!
What the hell? An entity has somehow trapped our ship.
That's disappointing.
And turned the crew into characters from a children's book.
The book. They should have made you the hero.
Until we undo all of this.
Kneel before me.
Yes, of course. We are stuck here.
If you should fall in battle, I will sing an epic song.
Great.
Okay, so there you have it. That's the Mine is a Terrible Thing to Waste top 10, which brings us to Cam's favorite list, the Kai Who Loved Me top 10 Trek spy episodes. This started at number 10 from Enterprise, Affliction and Divergence. Number 9, The Mind's Eye, otherwise known as The Manchurian Candidate with Geordi. Number 8 was Improbable Cause and the Dias Cast. Number 7, Defiant. Number 6, Inquisition, the Inquisition. Number 5, The Enterprise Incident. Number 4, Lower Decks, not to be confused with the TV show, the 7th season episode of Next Gen. Number 3, it's Chain of Command. Number 2, Inter Arma Annam Silent Legis. And number 1, of course, in a very predictable pick, it's In the Pale Moonlight. Honorary mentions, Robert Meyer Burnett, it was Errand of Mercy. Ashley, it was Conspiracy. He's the president of the Unicare Pleiades fan club. Darren picked Journey
and
to Babel.
Scott.
What?
I said and Twyla Scott.
And Twyla Scott. Yeah, and Twyla Scott. That's right. And Mark Altman picked Workforce from Voyager. Okay. So, Cam, you're a resident spy expert. What do you think of that list?
I think you guys have nailed all the best ones up front. Like, I think In the Pale Moonlight is the perfect spy episode of Star Trek. And I mean, Inter Arma Enam Silent Legis is great. I would have probably bumped Enterprise Incident up a little more. I think that one is just very cool. And I like the way it kind of divides the spy story between the Kirk undercover act and also like the Spock, almost like honeypot routine. I think that's a lot of fun. And that episode has aged really well. The one that I'm kind of shocked didn't get mentioned, and on the TV or on the podcast I do, SpyHards, we tackle a different spy movie every week. So I watch spy movies endlessly. The ones that grab me the most are the ones that do something that feels a little outside of what you might expect, something that's a little different. And so when I see something like The Mind's Eye, I like how it's kind of a riff on Manchurian Candidate.
The Manchurian Candidate? Anyway,
Boom. But I go, well, I kind of feel like I've seen that. The one that I was shocked by was that Face of the Enemy did not make the list with Deanna Troi posing as a Tal Shiar agent, because it's giving us something we've never seen. This was like the kind of the undercover alien act we've seen in Enterprise Incident. So that's not new. But the idea of an empath going through an espionage situation and using that skill set, I think is conveyed incredibly well. It's a very fun episode just in general and the mythology it's delving into. But like Deanna Troi, guys, how many episodes does this character really have that are great? Not many.
Not many, no.
Just the
right?
one.
This is it. And the fact it didn't make the list, I think, is rather concerning.
I think we were disturbed by her shoulder pads, honestly.
And I think because I think we talked about it.
We did.
And again, it's just unfortunately the sets in that are so bad that let the episode down. But it's an episode that I'm quite fond of. I picked a couple of times as an honorary mention because, like you said, it's one of the few episodes where Deanna actually gets to do something and make a contribution.
It isn't just falling in love with some pale man.
Some D-bag.
Yeah, right, exactly.
Enterprise D-bag.
Some really boring, third-rate character actor. That's really interesting. Jesse, what do you think? Face the Enemy, should that have gotten a spot on this list?
Dude, I don't remember Face the Enemy.
That's the one where
I was working. I apologize. I had a job.
Troy goes undercover as a Romulan.
I think this list is good. I definitely think the what's it called? Inter Arma, that one.
Silent Legacy with Bill Sadler.
Yeah, that was super cool. And In the Pale Moonlight was amazing. Bill
Sadler was one badass bitch in that episode.
I think these are good. I think they can do it well,
Isaac, what do you think? Do you Face the Enemy belong there?
Yeah, probably. It's one of the few good Troy episodes, and if that's a thing, then it must be something. But I think Lower Decks. I love Lower Decks, the episode of TNG, but when it comes to the espionage aspect, I think it's a little high. I think Enterprise Incident and Inquisition are both better, especially in terms of the espionage aspect. When it comes to Workforce, I'm a little iffy on it because I don't really consider that a espionage episode.
In retrospect, I would switch it for Face of the Enemy, to be honest.
Okay, well, you can't do that. It's over.
I can't do it. It's done. It's done. It's finished. You can't do it. You can't. There's no take backs. Rob is stuck with Gamesters and Triskelion, and I'm stuck with Workforce. I was just trying to spread the love around.
You're stuck with choosing the Ty Condoroga as your holodeck honorable mention.
Oh, shut up. I shouldn't let you listen to these podcasts. Okay.
But,
what? You want to add something to that, or you want to stop talking?
Yeah. Do we not want a Section 31 to replace In the Pale Moonlight?
Nope.
That's not going to be happening. Okay. Well, we're getting down to it. We're getting down to our last top 10 list. And episode 9 was our top 10 guilty pleasures ever. Now, this was interesting. Was it you, Zazie, who said you don't believe in guilty pleasures?
I do not believe in guilty pleasures. No.
God bless you. Well, that is a case to be made.
They believe in you.
Yeah, and so this was our list. Whether you believe it or not, this list exists. I'm about to share it with you, and perhaps some of you might have your own guilty pleasures or episodes you feel don't get the respect that they deserve, that maybe are better than they're given credit for. Number 10, it's from Next Generation Genesis. This is where the crew gets turned into Neanderthals. Number 9, here it is for you, Isaac, The Magnificent Ferengi with Iggy Pop as a Vorta. Okay. Just because Ira Stephen Bear could cast whoever he wanted. Number 8, it's The Way to Eden. It's kind of like when we cast Deborah von Valkenburg as Bill's love interest in Free Enterprise. Oh, she was in the Warriors And
come out and play.
And Streets of Fire. Let's cast her. Okay, number 8, The Way to Eden. That's a controversial pick from the original series. Number 7, Spectre of the Gun. This is the Western, the OK Corral from the original series. Number 6, The Naked Now. This is the second episode of The Next Generation, a follow-up to the original series. Great episode, The Naked Time. Number 5, for all you Vegas fans, it's The Royale. Number 4, it's The Game. The Game. This was Next Generation's attempt to do Invasion of the Body Snatchers. Number 3, it's Young Mr. Lincoln. It's The Savage Curtain from Star Trek. Number 2, Spock's Brain. Considered by many the worst episode, considered among us our number 2 guilty pleasure. And now this is the one you've been waiting for. Number 1 guilty pleasure of all time. It's Star Trek 3, The Search for Spock. And our honorary mentions, Robert Meyer Burnett picked, you'll be happy to hear this, Masks. Masaka Was Waking. And for Ashley Edward Miller, it was Devil's Due, which one of our listeners pointed out, why did you guys not mention the magics of Migas 2 when you mentioned Devil's Due? And
because they rhyme and we hate that.
And also we try and keep the honorary mention short because we're in the third hour of the podcast and we like to try and move on to our number 1. Darren Doctorman picked a beloved episode of one of his favorite guilty pleasures, the Omega Glory. And it's not just because he can read the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution so well.
There's no Declaration of Independence.
I know, it's the Constitution. We, the people.
I love that one.
And then we'll get to
Thank
you.
Jesse.
And then my pick was Code of Honor from the first season of Next Generation. So Jesse, you said you love the Omega Glory.
I loved it. I thought it was rad. It's no subspace Rhapsody from Strange New Worlds, which is the best episode ever.
How dare you?
And it's not a guilty pleasure. It's just a pure pleasure.
I wish we had like an ejector button where we could just eject our guests.
We kind of do.
You can kick us out. Kick us out.
No, never.
Oh, no.
Never.
What just happened?
So, Kay, what about you? Guilty pleasures?
Well, first of all, Code of Honor, I don't think I could ever watch again. I genuinely think Spectre of the Gun is a good episode.
Yes.
Guilty pleasure.
Yeah.
I think it's really good.
Yep.
I'm confused though, because
dun.
Wow.
Is this not on there?
I can't see
What are you
that
showing
is.
us? I can't
I'm
see.
showing you the Howard family candle from Sub Rosa.
That's the greatest.
Sub-Rosa.
Where'd you get that? I want one of
Wow.
A friend of mine gave it to me because
those. That is fantastic.
Kay,
It's
Kay,
only
explain
guilty and not a pleasure.
Most people listen to the audio podcast, so can you explain what
yes.
you're showing us?
This is an action figure of the Howard family candle.
From Sub Rosa.
It is.
It's not a candle.
It is mint in package. This is the Steamy Ghost Mist edition, but Sex Ghost not included. On the back it says, a family heirloom for generations. This candle holds a dark secret. Uncover the mystery of Ronan, Dr. Crusher's grandmother, Nana's ghost lover, who then seduces Beverly and, well, yes, dinner light that candle.
Why is the wick gone on that?
Why do you think?
I think this episode is one of the dumbest hours of television I've ever watched.
I think they should have changed the name of the episode to Sex Ghost.
That's what it's known as.
I will say this: when I was working on the Next Generation
Blu-ray
HD
set?
restoration, when we got that episode in, that episode is stunningly beautiful. It is unbelievably well photographed. It looks amazing.
They had to do something good with it.
It's just god awful, but god damn, does it look good?
It is literally a ripoff of an Anne Rice character.
Oh yeah.
It is like it's Lasher. It
should be on AMC.
ripoff of Lasher. It's amazing.
I only wish we could have, if Cliff Bowl did not kill the theatrical releases of every season of TNG, I would have fought for that as the greatest 7th season episode to put up on the big screen.
That's hysterical.
I really would.
Jeff, what about you? What's a guilty pleasure?
Wait, stop. So did Fuller write Sub Rosa? Brian Fuller?
No, Brannon did.
No, Brandon Braga wrote it.
And
But
Frakes
did he
directed
write it with Brian?
No.
Brian was not involved in it.
No.
No. Other than he never even worked on Next Gen.
Oh, I'm sorry.
He couldn't hold a candle to it.
Well, at one point, Brandon Braga actually tweeted about Sub Rosa. It was terrible. Please forgive me. So
he's been saying that for like 87 different episodes. Come on.
Is there a Voyager episode called Sub Rosa?
There's probably a lot of episodes. There might be.
That's true.
That must have been a nickname for various episodes. Did you Sub Rosa that episode? I did.
Not to be confused with NASA astronaut Stu Rusa.
Sub Rosa is one too many words for most Voyager titles, honestly.
A Sub Rosa by any other name. No, because everything with the Voyager was the ship, the tunnel, the bridge.
There's no the. It's just, it would have been bridge, tunnel, ship.
Jeff, you have something you'd like to put out there?
Proud.
Okay.
Go ahead, Jeff.
I'm waiting for
Onanism.
I just want to be completely redundant and reiterate Darren's and Jesse's choice of the Omega Glory. I think it's absolutely great up until the point that the American flag shows up. It's got one of the
point where it gets good.
Yeah, for you, it's got one of the greatest villains in Star Trek. That the only villain who could easily beat the crap out of Kirk and clearly enjoy it. And his speech is, I think, it's the key to why the original Star Trek worked, because just with words and his performance, this guy puts in your mind this image of this mass slaughter of thousands of people, this epic thing that could have never been shown on television. And it's like Joseph Conrad, Heart of Darkness for Star Trek. But it's just the whole thing's tripped up because Kirk reads the Constitution.
Zazie, when you hear this, do you think I get it, or like this guy is like insane?
I mean, like I said, I don't think there's such a thing as a guilty pleasure. So, I mean, I genuinely like a lot of these episodes on this list. I love The Naked Now. I think Spectre of the Gun is a really great episode. And I also do want to speak in defense of Spock's brain. I love that episode so much. I think it's amazing. I mean, is it like very silly? Yes, but it's so much fun. It's so much fun.
Yeah. Like Spock's brain is beautiful idiocy to me. Like it's so much fun. Like it's not, it's campy and silly, but in the best ways. Like it's actually fun. And there's a reason that the Wonder Years paid tribute to it. They recognize the genius as well. Yep. I feel like with my guilty pleasures, well, I looked at this list and I was like, there's a lot of like mediocre to good Star Trek episodes on here or films. Like, Search for Spock is not one of my favorites, but I don't know that I would call it a guilty pleasure. I think of like
we're guilty.
Okay, fair enough.
We're guilty for liking it. Because we know how terrible it is. Go ahead.
I think I am more in the K camp of having a real appreciation for bad, sexy Star Trek episodes. That to me is always like just the best, worst type of episode. So Sub Rosa was on my list, but also Bound, the Enterprise Orion episode, became like a running joke with my friends and I for having, Reed in the like gym having to work out to like ward off horniness, like him and Mayweather. Incredible stuff. Whoever wrote that, like smoke was coming off the pen. The Favorite Son episode with Harry Kim and the sexy vampires. That one jumped out to me. And lastly, I mean, the Edo Planet and Justice from TNG. I mean, come on.
Next time on Star Trek The Next Generation.
They certainly are fit.
The crew visits a planet of sensual pleasure.
Death?
By breaking any law.
But an innocent violation
No, Wes!
puts Wesley's life in jeopardy.
Drop it now.
And despite everyone's rescue attempts,
He's being held safely until sundown.
he faces an alien death sentence on Star Trek The Next Generation.
I'll never forget.
Another great one along those lines, The Price with the yoga sequence
Matt McCoy.
in the middle of the corridor.
Yes.
And Matt McCoy and the oil massage. It's got everything.
Another absolutely terrible toy boyfriend. That girl could not.
Yeah.
I mean, every guy she chose.
doll.
Matt McCoy.
Like in Haven, the one she was supposed to marry. What a
Haven?
dud.
Oh my God, that guy. Oh.
Wyatt.
Was he?
Wyatt.
Cam, I will tell you, the first time I was on the set of Next Gen was for the episode Too Short a Season. And it was the first time I met Frakes. And I remember what he said to me to this day. He said, man, you should have come last week for the Edo Planet. That was a good one.
There was a year at the Star Trek Las Vegas con where a group of cosplayers all dressed as Edo and be seen jogging around the venue like the entire weekend.
I remember that.
That's amazing.
I remember that. That was pretty funny. Isaac, you got it. You got one for us before we move on?
Yes. I have two things to say. First, Rob, I'm surprised you didn't pick Alternative Factor for your guilty pleasure.
Hey, you know what? Even I can only go so far. They wouldn't have let me. They prevented me. I will defend that episode till my dying day. But you know what? To be honest, you can't defend that episode. I think The Way to Eden, again, like I said in our actual episode, I believe in that episode. I think that if it didn't have the hippie, the obvious links to the time in which it was made, and they actually tried to take it out of that era, I think the idea of Dr. Severn, I mean, if you look at Todd Haynes' film Safe that he made with Julianne Moore, there's a lot of elements of that in The Way to Eden. And I think The Way to Eden is defensible. I think it's
clearly we felt so because of ideas at the core of it. And I will point out Spectre of the Gun, the reason it was there is because every edition of the Best of Trek back in the 70s would list it as the #1 worst episode of Star Trek. We would agree with you and say it's a much better episode. It's not a guilty pleasure. It's a good episode. But because it had been tarnished with this brush of being the worst episode of Star Trek, we extolled it as a guilty pleasure.
And then another episode, which I mean, I recognize is bad, but I think it still has a lot of great moments in it, is Star Trek series finale, Turnabout Intruder. Because even though it has a lot of terrible aspects to it, it has the best Sulu and Chekhov moments in the entire show. It has really good Scotty moments, McCoy moments. Shatner's great. And I think overall it's not as bad as some people say, even though it's still not like a great episode.
Yeah, that's a great pick.
Well, and also I think it's a great choice because what it's saying about gender roles in terms of our culture now, like I could never be a starship captain, but now I maybe could. And while people laugh at it, I think even the worst episodes of Star Trek have things you can look into and go, huh, that's interesting. Let's talk about that.
Yeah. Okay, well, listen, that brings us to our final episode of the countdown. Important. And this was by far the most important, and it's probably going to be the most controversial. Fortunately, Strange New Worlds has no pets in it, as far as I know. Okay, this was Cat Got Your Trek, top 10 Star Trek pets. Number 10 was the test animal from Alpha 177 from The Enemy Within. Number 9 was Sylvia the Black Cat from Catspaw. Number 8 was Livingston the Fish from The Beloved, The Next Generation. Number 7, the Klingon Targ from Star Trek 3. Number 6, Chester from Honor Among Thieves, which someone also mentioned online would have been a great for our spy episodes. And they're probably right that Honor Among Thieves should have been a spy episode. But it got on the pet episode. So, what's cooler? Number 5, Porthos from Enterprise and the Three Musketeers. Number 4, it's Isis from Assignment Earth. Number 3, it's Spot, the cat, Data's beloved cat. Number 2, Ichaya, the ill-fated sellout of Mr. Spock from yesteryear. And at number 1, we can all guess what it is. It's Tribbles, the only love money can buy. So what do we think about this, guys?
All right, thanks very much.
Yeah. How does Ichaya not get number 1? That animal gave its life for its owner. It was big. It was cuddly. Like, what more could you possibly want?
We would have made it number 1, but not everybody knows what Ichaya is. Everyone knows what it is.
That's not why.
That's not our job to people don't know what something is.
People think.
We give them a hashtag.
And why didn't we make him number 1?
Because Tribbles are the only love money can buy. You can't buy a sellout.
Sure you can.
And he was animated, and animation isn't real, Darren.
Yeah, but he was talked about in Journey to Babel, so he exists.
He's real. I know it. It's real. I was there.
How dare you?
Okay, so But do we miss any pets? Zazie, is there somebody, a beloved pet that in Star Trek that we miss somehow? Like we mentioned Buster from Generations and a bunch of honorary mentions that we...
Butler,
not Buster.
Can I say species 8472?
Not a pet. Not a pet.
Not a pet, okay.
That's a pet. Okay.
They're scary AF, man.
What about you, Jeff?
What
You
about
have
Ripper?
cats?
I don't have any favorites, but I just remember being furious that the legendary, iconic first captain of the Enterprise had a puppy. That made him to me immediately like diminished and like kind of.
Oh, you're so wrong. Porthos should have been number 4. Honestly,
He was the best Star Trek captain, Porthos.
Yeah, he was. He was the best character on that show.
He was.
Cam, what about you? What are we missing? Is there a pet that we should have? A Beauregard from the Man Trap or some other character?
Well, I was questioning because a lot of these animals I think are perfect picks, but what about, the odd person, the one who wants like the metal pet, like a scorpion or
K9?
like a snake? And I thought, what about the Ceti Alpha eel?
Oh, interesting. That's a good pick.
Like, I don't want to cuddle with one, obviously, but to have that on display and show that off to your friends.
And he calls them his pets.
Yeah.
Like Laura Banks.
Except different.
Yeah, I mean, that's a great pick, the Ceti eel, because, of course, it's very useful in getting people to bend to your will. Which would have been helpful. It would have been helpful during this podcast about an hour ago. But yeah, no, the Ceti eel's a great pick, and obviously a very memorable pick in the history of Star Trek and Star Trek 2.
Quite domesticated. That's why they were on the pet list, because they weren't quite domesticated.
Oh, so they couldn't be feral?
Porthos.
Yeah.
By the way, Kay, I did pick Grudge as my honorary mention from Discovery because I think that's a really cute cat.
Yeah, Grudge is a great pet. I would say that Sylvia is not technically a pet. So it's a little like maybe that one comes off. And
what would you swap her for?
Okay, so this is not technically a pet, although people think it's a pet. I would put Moopsie on there.
That's from Lower Decks.
Yes. Because Moopsie's adorable until Moopsie's not adorable.
Well, Ashley picked the dog from Lower Decks.
The dog is great. I love the dog. Yeah.
Moopsie's a good call, though.
And Darren, what did you pick from? Do you remember what you picked for pet?
Remember.
Rob, you remember what you picked for pet?
Darren picked Tango.
Oh, right, Tango.
Of course.
Yeah.
I picked Khan's pets from my honorary mention, or Khan's pet.
Rob,
yeah, you picked
Laura
Khan's
Banks.
pet, right? Laura Banks, he picked. Rob, true to form, picked Laura Banks because in the publicity material she was referred to as Khan's pet. And then Darren picked Tango, the horse from The Cage, and Menagerie. Yeah, those are all great picks. Jesse, I'm sure you have some great insight into Star Trek pets.
I personally, I did love Isis. I was a huge fan. She was a smoke show, but I did think Chaya that thing was incredible. The Sealot, and it's sad that tardigrade, on Discovery didn't work out the way it could have. But I think this is. I think it's a good list.
I like all the love for the Sellout. I gotta say. I like that everybody really likes that.
Frame could have been a great Star Trek character. They went with that original incarnation of the tardigrade in the engineering section. They could have done it.
Would have been good.
But they didn't.
In the original Brian Fuller version.
Hey, man, it's still Ephraim. Come on, it would have been good. A tardigrade named Ephraim. Come on.
It was good. It was good.
Andy Dufresne?
Ephraim, not Andy Dufresne. No. No, it's a different guy. Different guy, and he didn't kill his wife
because he could have been on the ship. He could have been on the ship with Captain Maxwell.
He could. I mean, come on, Ben Gunton. Come on, or Ben Maxwell.
Bob Gunton.
Bob Gunton. I'm mixing and matching the name.
Who are you, Rob? I find you obtuse, man. I find you obtuse.
I'm going into the hole for another month.
Remember the Toos. What?
Oh my God! Well,
he was a great though. Mad Starfleet captain Bob Gutton as Bob Maxwell was great.
He was fantastic. I can't believe that The Wounded didn't make any of our lists. It's a great episode. Also, you know what, Cam, somebody else online, one of our listeners had mentioned that we should have, for the spy episode, should have had the Defector, which I think also was a good.
Another great one.
Wow.
Yeah. You know, Alan Scarf.
That's truly one of the great Next Generation episodes.
Yeah,
I think we missed that one.
From the third
that
season.
Should have been on the
really
list.
Great. And they really stepped up their game. That opening shot when you see the Romulan ship, it's an effect shot where the camera pans over onto the Enterprise D. It's a beautiful effect shot. They really stepped up their game in the third season.
Yeah, no, definitely. So many comments, but I'm not going to share them with you. So many comments from our listeners.
Anything good, or are they all bad?
No, good. The Royale with a lot of cheese, great pick. Best comedy episodes of Star Trek. TREKSPERTS asked why William Campbell did not voice his character in More Troubles, More Troubles.
He didn't have the courage.
He was on location filming Filmation Shazam TV series. Okay. Well, you know, given the fact that everyone was on location, just sent tape in, that's not the reason.
Yeah.
because it would have been
because they didn't
easier.
want to pay him.
They didn't want to pay him. That's exactly right. After listening, all I can say is brain. What have you done to my brain? Spock's brain, great pick. Let's see. My favorite exchange from the Savage Curtain. Kirk, your Surak is a brave man. Spock, men of peace usually are. Let's see. I'm crestfallen when you comment on Devil's Due and don't compare it to the Magics of Magus 2. Sorry, David Miller. That's just the way it is.
No relation?
And no relation. Sue Vasquez, the librarian, says the Riker episode mentioned was important, but I never believed the romance. She's talking about the outcast. I love the one which involved Vic, which should have been ranked much higher. Of course, she's talking about My Way. The fact that you're immortal does not mean you also have great scientific or artistic talent. Another vote against, Requiem for Methuselah. Thank you for not choosing the one with the same surname as one of your first names, because this was when she didn't want to spoil stuff. She said this. She was a great character, but there was zero chemistry despite good reviews. Not sure.
Oh, was that Mark of Gideon?
Oh, probably, but I don't think we picked that.
Oh, I thought it was somehow we were going to do a Bobby Darin thing in there, and I was like, what was going on?
No.
But I got to say, and I don't know how many of you saw this, speaking of objectionable lists, but EW also did a list of ranking the Star Trek series. And number 11 was Star Trek Picard. Number 10 was the animated series. Number 9, Enterprise. 8, Prodigy. 7, Discovery. There you go, Jesse. Number 6, Voyager. Number 5, Lower Decks. 4 was Strange New Worlds. 3 was The Next Generation. Number 2 was the original series, Star Trek. And number 1 was Deep Space Nine. That was an interesting list.
Yeah.
Well, I have to say, I'm so grateful to all of you. You're all great sports, coming on, looking over our lists, and sharing your thoughts and participating in what
and gaining strength from the sharing.
This remarkable end of the year tradition. And as much as the countdowns have become something beloved by our listeners, I believe that these rebuttals are becoming equally popular because people love to hear, other perspectives. And it's so great to get your perspectives, beyond our usual musings. So a big thank you. Kay, you watch Star Trek every weekend, don't you? You have a little get together with friends.
We're not doing it anymore, but we did, because people started having lives, but we started doing it during the pandemic. Because we had a couple of people in our group who hadn't seen everything. So we started doing it just over Zoom. We'd watch 2 episodes every Saturday, and we did it till, like the beginning of last year, I think. Mm-hmm. The first 2 episodes we watched were Threshold and Sub Rosa, if that tells you anything about what we were.
And people stuck with it after that. That's amazing.
Yeah. It was really fun.
Because they knew it couldn't get any worse.
I remember going on the Zoom after Threshold, and one of my friends came on the Zoom and just laughed for about 10 minutes. She just couldn't even say anything.
Wow, that's crazy. Well, and then Jesse, I know, you've been on so many successful shows, but you're also very involved in the video game world as well. Do you have a favorite Star Trek video game?
No, not really. Is there a good one? I did get into that like the free to play battles one. I did a little bit when I was on Discovery, which was kind of cool.
The 25th anniversary games are pretty interesting.
Yeah.
They're worth doing. I mean, that was a long time ago, but they're still really entertaining.
Cam, you seem to be nodding your head. Is there a Star Trek video game you love?
No, I was going to say those 25th anniversary games are the ones that jump out to me as well. Yeah. And I was actually I picked up maybe about 2 years ago the original Nintendo game of 25th, and I was playing it with friends. Wow. And you know what? I'm not a huge gamer in terms of like modern gaming, but I do like the vintage stuff. And those 25th ones are pretty fun.
They're really good. They're really well done.
Jesse, do you miss laboring in the Star Trek universe, or is a bunch of people like this too much to?
Dude, we loved it.
Take?
I did love it, and it was awesome. And there were moments that were amazing when there were, look, I got to work with Joe Menosky, who I love, is such a great Star Trek writer, and there were some people there who were into it, and being able to, to work on the props with Brian and Discovery and like help design phasers and talk about all that was really cool. So I missed it. I just, I think I sort of have similar feelings to everybody about a lot of the stuff that they've generated. And I do love Strange New Worlds, and it gives me hope, and it really helped me rediscover my love for Trek in many ways,
That's great. And then Cam, you are every week, along with Scott, do the SpyHards, and it's a great podcast. I can't say enough good things about it. What about you? What do you got coming up?
Actually, about an hour ago, the day we were recording this, we dropped our Star Trek Section 31 review. So that's out there. And I also have interviews that are going to be coming out, I guess, towards the end of this week with a couple of the cast members, Casey Roll and Humberly Gonzalez, who I talked to on the press tour. And we have talked to a couple of Star Trek people in the past as well, actually. We did an interview with Brandon Braga about his work on Mission Impossible 2, and with Nicholas Meyer about working on
Tomorrow Never Dies.
Yeah, Tomorrow Never Dies. He was part of a writers group that were brought together to try and fix the problems with that movie. Yeah.
And you also did a great panel for us at Star Trek Las Vegas on our man Bashir. That's still available if people want to listen to that. I thought it was terrific. And Kay, what's happening in your world?
I'm waiting for television to come back.
Stay alive till 25. It's 25.
I did. I stayed alive. I stayed alive till 25. So
it's over, Kay. It's done. Put a fork in it. It's toast. It's not coming back.
But I'm not qualified to do anything else.
Yeah, and Jeff, you got any new books coming out? I know you have that wonderful Jerry Goldsmith compendium that was so successful last year on Kickstarter coming out.
Someday that will exist. I'm working on. I'm doing a new. I always am actually annoyed because you introduced me as the author of the music of Star Trek, which was like 1999.
But it's still the definitive book on the music of Star Trek. No one has stopped it.
I'm working on a new version of that. And I'm working on a book about The Crow because you guys all know what a big goth fan I am. I'm also going to do I'm working with Kyle Newman on a big 60th anniversary Star Trek book for Penguin, which I know you know about, Mark. And I'm looking for some.
Kyle's a great guy. We love Kyle.
Yeah, I'm looking for
straddles
some
two worlds, Star Wars and Star Trek.
On that, so this is a good control group for that.
And Isaac, if they enjoy hearing your musings, where can they find you on the podcast world with Caden Miller?
You can find me and Caden at Kid Stays in the Podcast. We have a few new episodes coming out soon. So follow us, and I look forward to that. And we'll be back on a regular schedule soon.
And now we've seen all these people in various capacities, but Zazie, this was your baptism by fire, and I have to say it was a pleasure and a delight having you join the TREKSPERTS with your insights.
Thank you. I mean, it was a delight for me as well. Yeah.
This is when you tell us how honored and thrilled you are to be on the show.
I'm so honored and thrilled.
Shake your head. Kay's like, you don't know Mark well enough for him to be saying this shit.
This was so much fun. I mean, this is like all I ever want to do in life is just like spend hours talking about Star Trek. So
be careful what you wish for.
Don't do it. Don't do it.
It's tempting, but
I guess this is like sort of my second foray into the Star Trek fandom publicly in like 10 years. Like 10 years ago, my mom actually wrote this article for Vanity Fair called My Super Sweet Teenage Star Trek Convention, about taking me to my first Star Trek convention ever. So that was sort of the first time anything like public about me being a Trekkie entered the internet. But so I've been laying.
What was that like? What was the response to that article, and how did you feel about being the subject of your mom's article about? And what was the convention?
The convention was the one in Las Vegas. It was the big one in Las Vegas.
We've heard of it.
August, yeah. And it was super fun. Oh my God. I mean, I asked my mom. I had already been a Trekkie for a couple years at that point, and I asked my mom, I was like, can we please go to the convention? And she was like, sure. This also sounds like it would be a really good Vanity Fair article. So, because my mom has been a writer for them for a while. And yeah, it was just a blast. And because my mom was also a journalist there, we got to like go backstage and like meet a lot of people that we wouldn't have gotten to meet otherwise. Like I got to have a conversation with William Shatner, which was really cool. And Joan Collins, we had this really lovely conversation with her. And yeah, it was just delightful. And I guess at the time, the article made sort of the rounds among the Trekkie community. Is that right? I wasn't really aware of it, but
it did.
Okay, yeah. What was the response like? Because I wasn't really on the internet at that age, but like.
Well, I can tell. I'm a huge Vanity Fair guy.
Okay, yeah.
And I remember it very well. That it even showed up in that magazine. So. Yeah, it was good. But you know what? It was not one of these look, it's Vanity Fair. And I've been reading that magazine for 30 years. It's not what it used to be, but back in the day, Graydon Carter was still there. It was all good. So,
yeah.
You know what I love about living in the future? Is like while we were having that conversation, Jesse already found the link and sent it to me so that I can, did I rat you out?
No,
was I not supposed to say that?
Yeah,
I actually think it's pretty cool.
I can't read it. Cool. Is this a picture of you though? There's like 3 kids here.
I'm not one of those kids. There is a picture.
Thank God.
Yeah,
there's a picture of
her.
Oh, there you are.
Yeah.
The author's daughter in full Star Trek. Oh, you're dressed as in original. That's great with 2 Borg. But you're breaking canon because the original series characters never encountered the Borg.
Yeah. No.
Okay. First of all, you're not sharing it with our audience, and second of all, you're not sharing it with us. So, thanks.
Okay, we'll share this on the social channels if that's okay, Zazie. If you're not going to be too embarrassed.
No, that's okay. Yeah, okay. This is my one claim to Star Trek fame, really. So,
well, now it's 2. But this is fantastic. This is awesome. And last but not least, Rob Burnett, you got the True Noir audio dramas coming out.
Look, other than Free Enterprise, I think the greatest thing I've ever done personally in my life is what's going on is I'm going to keep editing when we finish recording this. But I'm doing a 10-chapter audio drama that was written by Max Allan Collins, who wrote Road to Perdition. He adapted his first detective novel, True Detective, no relation to the HBO series, but it stars Bill Sadler, Sloan from Section 31, Jeffrey Combs plays Mayor Anton Cermak, Katie Sackhoff, Barry Bostwick, who I told him, how much do I love the fact that you voiced her in Fantastic Planet. It's one of the great experiences of my life working with some of the most incredible actors I've ever worked with. Ashley knows that. And it comes out, if you want to go get it, go to truenoir.co. And it's not done yet, but it's pretty amazing. So I'm really proud of it. Really proud.
I am so appreciative to all of you who've been such good sports for joining us. I can hardly believe, Rob in particular, who's been with us all these weeks. We thought we would be done. Well, maybe it's not Easter, but we are done by Arbor Day. So that's pretty good. I just, and it'll give me something to do on President's Day, because I don't want to have to think about that. So I'm so grateful for all of you joining us. I know Darren and Ashley feel the same way. I can't believe, to quote a Sci-Fi Universe cover, I can't believe it's over, but it is indeed a wrap on the 2024 holiday countdowns. I hope you'll all join us again next year when we do the rebuttal to our next.
You mean later this year? For
Cocktailists.
Which we start recording in 3 weeks.
And that you'll all be joining us again on the show individually and as a group. But if you're out there and you want to share some thoughts on this week's episode, of course, you can do it through all your favorite social channels or trekspertsplus@gmail.com. And next week, we will resume our regular programming schedule. You can join the Treksperts every Thursday, wherever you listen to podcasts, and Deck 78 every Monday. So at this point, there's only one thing left to say on behalf of Robert Meyer Burnett, Jesse Alexander, Isaac Altman, Cam Smith, Kay Reindl, Jeff Bond, ZAZIE Sales, Daren Dochterman, Ashley Miller, and Mark A. Altman. What do we say?
Hi.
Oh, my God.
Live long and
Keep on
prosper.
trekking.
Keep on trekking. Ingloriously, of course. That was awful. You guys, that's what you get for missing staff meetings. I'm done with you. Goodbye. Good luck. And arrivederci.
Goodbye. Good luck. I'll see you.
Bye-bye.